Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I'm going live about now. This is my fifth streaming day in a row during the entire work week from Monday when I was traveling back to Berlin on train in the early morning, then going to work, then running towards the stream, mixing it along with my gym routine and everything else. I've managed to stream now every day of the week, which I know a lot of professional streamers do, but never forget this is a hobby for me because I just couldn't ignore this opportunity. There was just so much cool stuff from Apple, and there was so much follow-up coverage to give. And to be honest, I kind of wanted to take the day off today. I thought maybe by Monday we'll have benchmarks or even early reviews. By the reviews, I kind of thought maybe that's a Tuesday thing, right? Because obviously you were able to pre-order all of Apple's newest gadget on Wednesday, and Apple said they are coming out on Wednesday 11th, basically a week later. So we should be getting some reviews on Monday, Tuesday, maybe even some early Wednesday, who knows. So today is basically a surprise stream for me because we got a ton of benchmarks. And guys, I left the link in the description of this channel. I'm going to make myself a little bit smaller. Please go to our Discord. You will find Jimmy James, one of the most premier leaker of early Geekbench results from Apple's earliest hardware. He has his methods to find the numbers. Massive shout out to him. Massive shout out to still anyone in the chat, Angelica, Rosa, even Steve giving us greetings from the gym. So some of our MarkTech Pro Max level supporters. Riley, our #1 yapper in the chat, saying hi. We better get some big numbers. The ones in Discord did look good though. So thank you so much for joining the stream. Thank you for being so interested and so engaged. So as I said, if you feel like joining the Discord, that's a great place to start. But beyond that, subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it out with anybody who think might enjoy it. Comment live. I love interacting with a lively comment section. I love getting your agreements, your disagreements, your suggestions for future content. Later on in the video, I'll probably react to the Galaxy S26 Ultra review by Mrwhosetheboss. We've been following the Galaxy S26 family now since its inception, so I'm really tuned in and really want to see how it all plays out. But of course, as always, you are able to make suggestions, what I should watch, what I should read, and we grow from that together. Of course, beyond that, don't forget, guys, you can support this channel directly via super chats or super stickers or by becoming a channel member. Shout out to Angelica, Steve, Max, Maximus, and Jonathan, our MarkTech Pro Max supporters over here. The real SpongeBob saying, can I do gooning with M5 Max? Well, that's the best transition you're probably ever gonna get for benchmarks result on the M5 Max MacBook Pro, whether it's 14 or 16 inches. So there are some, as always, like roughly 5 to 10% difference potentially. At the very tippy top, if you get the fully configured M Max variant, there shouldn't be any problems with the cooling of the M5 Pro chip. Obviously, we'll have to see for real-world results. For in-depth comparisons. Shout out to the likes of MaxTech, who do really great side-by-side comparisons, whether it's between MacBooks with different chip configurations or Macs of different generations. So a lot to sink our teeth into here. Guys, so this is the result that kind of kicked it all off in a way for the M5 Max MacBook Pro. If you actually want to go to Geekbench yourself, that's something we are going to be doing throughout this stream. Your Macs basically are here 17,6. So by the way, don't make it a point or a dot. That doesn't work. 17,6, 17,7, and 17,9. So 17,6 and 17,9 are M5 Pro results, different sizes. And 17,7 is probably most likely because these are the most peak results we have been currently getting. These are the result I will be mostly reacting to today. These are M5 Max MacBook Pro results, most likely coming from the 16-inch MacBook Pro. You can also, of course, see that all of these numbers are derived from macOS 26.3.1, which just launched this week. We've also gotten a revision of iOS and macOS 26.4, the latest beta. So there's a lot of software, of course, coming out to make Apple's software ready for the new hardware. But the main release, 26.3.1, is where it's at and where we are getting, of course, these results from in terms of the software that these Macs are running. You guys can see I have so many tabs open that I already am struggling to find where I've prepared my stuff. You know what? I'm actually able to. So this is something I wanted to show. So that's how you do it. Now, some of you can analyze those websites much more deeply than I can. I'll fully admit to that. And you might even find results that are not searchable yet. But the main thing, Mac 17.7, 16-inch MacBook Pro with M5 Max. Or maybe it's the 14-incher. I would be surprised given some of the numbers. But yeah, this is what you should be looking out for. We can actually get to benchmark charts, look how Macs perform, right? And put all of it into context. So thankfully, the size adjustment between windows is really great now on macOS Tahoe. So I know some people really dislike macOS Tahoe. I really I like the design, but I also like the features. So before we get fully started, cheers to a very happy major benchmark league day. And thank you to anyone who is joining. Thank you to anyone leaving comments. Thank you to anyone making suggestions. Thank you to anyone joining the Discord. All that fun stuff. I already see some a new member joined the Discord. Some people are celebrating also this day is the Galaxy S26 release day. So yeah, to each and every one, no matter what you celebrate, no matter what your tech religion is, whether you are celebrating M Max benchmarks or M5 generation benchmarks, a Galaxy S26 release, you're all welcome. As I said later on, we will be reacting to the Galaxy S26 Ultra review by Mrwhosetheboss, and I will also be looking at some more concrete numbers that are provided to us by GSM Arena. So, single core results. Let's get to Apple's super core, because as you guys know, Apple did rebrand their performance cores on the M5 generation family now as super cores. My suggestion is this has primarily to do with the fact that Apple didn't like the way their efficiency cores were treated in the press. If to anybody who wants to know, Apple's E-cores are actually like a separate architecture specifically tuned for efficiency. They're not just P-cores with less cache, clock down, being made smaller with less logic by having a less wide out of order execution branch. No, but E-cores kind of sound bad. So when Apple had like 8 plus 4 E-cores, 10 plus 4 E-cores, even 12 plus 4 E-cores, right? Yeah, that's great to have so many P-cores, but Qualcomm calls kind of their E-cores as performance cores, and they call their, what Apple now calls their super cores, Qualcomm calls prime cores. So, and that makes Apple's E-cores look bad. That even kind of diminishes Apple's P-core standing. So this is why this core that we have already gotten on the M5 MacBook Pro that launched last year, right? So there's no architectural change here. There's also no clock speed change. So this is running at 4.6 gigahertz. If you guys know, the M5 iPad Pro with the same chip basically runs this at 4.4 gigahertz. This is probably done to achieve just very nice like battery life and reduce heat output and all that stuff, obviously, that we know Apple cares about. I'm not quite sure about the M5 MacBook Air yet. If somebody of you knows, please let me know. Write it in the comment section, or as I said early on, or just join the Discord and discuss all that fun stuff over there. But yes, with the single core performance, now I know these numbers might look a little bit higher on this end. But ultimately, these are the numbers that we already know about, right? It's 4,300 max points of single core results in Geekbench 6.6. We can actually look at Qualcomm's number. You see, guys, between work and taking a quick shower and eating a little bit, I didn't have as much time to prepare it as I would like to do. So that's Qualcomm. X Elite. So these are the numbers that we are getting from the highest end Qualcomm chip. That's that's going to be the Snapdragon X2 Elite Extreme, right? This is also running, by the way, on a 12 plus 6 core setup. So Apple actually is now very nicely matching Qualcomm's core numbers, and with it also like the balance. I can actually look up Snapdragon X2 Elite Extreme. So just looking at some wait, where's the Qualcomm website here? I want the actual specs from, like, I just want to make sure that I know the actual core distribution. It's 6 prime cores and 12 performance cores, right? Specs. Number of cores up to 18. Of course, they don't break it down here. They have up to 5 gigahertz clock speeds, by the way, on the prime cores, and you can see, as you could see, of course, they reach around 4,000 points. So they're clocked almost 10% higher than Apple's chip here is, but are delivering like 7% less performance. So there's a notable difference in the IPC results. One thing that actually is now aligned, though, is the clock speed for the efficiency cores. Maximum. That's the multi-core results. I'll take it back. As far as I know, the premium core. Oh God, Samsung's setup is just Qualcomm's. Yeah. 12, no, okay, 12 prime and 6 performance cores. Oh, so they are actually having to go a very different direction than Apple does. I apologize if I misconstrued it. I guess I was too impressed by Apple's results, because Apple is doing this with 6 super cores and 12 performance cores, formerly kind of known as efficiency cores, but this is actually a new chip architecture, as I say. Tell me about the M5 Mac Mini. Unfortunately, I cannot tell you about the M5 Mac Mini or the M5 Max or M5 Ultra Mac Studio. These devices have not launched. We do expect them, though, kind of in the first half of the year. When it comes to the iPad Mini, that's something we expect by the end of the year, though then we are not sure if it's going to be powered by the A19 Pro or the A20 Pro chip. So that's going to be an interesting story about the iPad Mini. And the base iPad, we almost expected this week. So we kind of either expected maybe to launch alongside an M5 Mac Mini, M5 Mac Studio, like around WWDC, or maybe it will actually launch alongside the iPad Mini by the end of the year. But this is all a little bit now out of whack, because in most ways we did expect that it would come out around this time. Do they not have clock speeds here? Because I do know that the performance cores are clocked at 3.6 gigahertz on the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5. Jesus, what a name. Apple's performance cores here are actually clocked at 4.4 gigahertz, right? So the Apple's equivalent of prime cores, what Apple has 6 of, and Qualcomm needs 12 of. So now I'm actually really curious about the peak power consumption that these chips are gonna get, because it just seems like Apple's architecture might be way more efficient. We've already discussed the big IPC difference, because this clocks higher but delivers lower results, which again, these are not bad results. These are results that will still beat Intel Panther Lake or AMD Strix Point and stuff like that, right? So don't take this me as bashing Qualcomm. I actually think they have a pretty good architecture in their hands. It's very clear that after their acquisition of Nuvia, they have some good CPU talent. Less so with the GPU. We're going to get to how unbalanced this processor is and the amount of GPU performance. This chip, we can quickly look at it, gives you like 45,000 points in OpenCL. This obviously is absolutely nothing on the performance here, which is like 5 times faster on the M5 Max. In fact, when you then look at the numbers here, you will see even in OpenCL, or a benchmark where the Mac noticeably underperforms because Apple has depreciated OpenCL, OpenGL for years now, right? Wait, is this an OpenGL or an OpenCL? OpenCL, yeah, it's just a raw compute benchmark. You will see that Apple already outperforms this by a solid like 10%. On OpenCL, and then just the distance towards Apple Metal Score. Now, the Vulkan scores might be a lot faster on the Qualcomm. Again, this is not specifically meant to bash Qualcomm. This is a GPU that is going to be somewhat competitive with not the highest end Panther Lake, but somewhat close to it. And it probably is going to deliver a much more efficient experience than something like the 4 nanometer heavily discounted for a little while. Guys, let me know if there are any technical issues. I saw my iPad buffering. I'm not sure if that came from the 5G connectivity on my iPad, or maybe there have been some issues with my internet. I am streaming over Ethernet. I'm doing everything I can, but obviously at around 6 p.m. is when people start to come home. So as they connect to their networks and stuff like that, just the internet becomes notably strained. And just for like a brief second, there can be a stutter or whatever. I do not have like a gigabit connection. I do not have like some kind of priority connection. So bear with me if ever something like this happens. Science.io saying, when do YouTuber get early MacBook release so we can see the comparison? The MacBooks are already in the hands of reviewers. Whenever they went to that like hands-on, that experience in New York and stuff like that, some of them probably just got it right on their hand. Who knows? Maybe somebody like Marquez might have even had earlier access. Like, you know how he sometimes opens up his reviews like, I had access to this for about a week and a half, right? And it was like introduced like a week ago, and you're like, oh, so he had it even before like the actual introduction, much less, of course, the review embargo. Guys, we have so many people watching. Thank you so much. It means so much to me. Please leave a like, help the algorithm boost us so that other people can find this stream, can consider joining over here, can join the Discord, can join all of our conversations. It would mean so much to me to help boost the community on such an interesting topic. I know chip discussions are some of the most popular things I do here on this channel. Sansa was saying, I see, so we'll probably see some video in a few hours. No. So there's a difference here between like unboxing and impressions and then reviews. Reviews are something that usually come out like a few days before the actual like launch date in terms of being available to sell, right? So at that point, since the actual like release date is going to be next Wednesday, you're probably gonna see reviews anywhere between like Monday, Tuesday, even maybe something on Wednesday. Don't forget, Apple announced the iPhone 17e, the M4 iPad Air, the M5 MacBook Air, the MacBook Neo with the 18 Pro chip, the MacBook Pro with these new processors. So they will need to fill out all those days so these devices don't take up oxygen from each other in terms of coverage. It's very important to have some spacing between that stuff. So single core numbers of very much untouched. Now, here is actually a very interesting thing in multi-core results. I would actually argue we are getting pretty amazing scaling, because this is this is a chip with 10 cores, right? So 4 performance cores, old nomenclature. I'm trying to improve myself. 4 super cores, 6 performance cores. And the fact that we're getting like 80% more performance here on 2 more performance cores and 2 more super cores and 6 more performance cores is a big deal. I want to know how much extra performance this thing eats up. Oh no, this actually this one still has E-cores, right? This is a new architecture. Oh yeah. Okay. Okay, rewind a little bit, right? We are doing the correct nomenclature. This is a chip with 4 super cores and 6 efficiency cores. This is a chip with 6 super cores and 12 performance cores, but these performance cores are not equal to the performance cores in here. They clock lower. They are 7 wide for out of order execution rather than 10, which is true for the super cores. So some say they're going to be roughly 70% the performance of the super core, which obviously would still make them way faster than the E-cores. However, the way they clock exactly in multi-threaded stuff and the way they're utilized by the operating system, all that we'll have to see in real-world results. Maybe some benchmarks by people like Geekervan will be able to specifically isolate this new type of performance cores. So we do actually not have E-cores in the M5 Pro and M5 Max chips. Obviously, you'll also be able to get a version with fewer cores. So on the M5 Pro and the M5 Max, as far as I know, every version is the Max-enabled one. The M5 Pro and the M5 Max use the same main chiplet. Science, you're welcome. So let me quickly look this up. MacBook Pro, just so I don't say anything potentially wrong. So let's even start with the 16-incher. Standard display, starting with the M5 Pro. And with the M5 Pro, the M5 Pro, this is already the 18-core version. You get only the, that's actually pretty good in terms of like binning, right? You basically have the fully enabled M5 Pro chip, which is, in terms of CPU, is actually going to give you more performance than the M4 Max, and that's a $200 higher starting price than for the M4 Pro, but this also comes now with double the storage and faster storage. This actually is a pretty good deal, this fully enabled entry-level 16-incher. That's actually quite cool. I actually didn't consider that. But let's continue. 29,000 points in Geekbench. What does that mean for the overall Mac family? I opened this up like twice. So I can go back here. So in terms of single core performance, we've already discussed it's on the level of the base M5. Even more importantly, of course, it is faster than the M4 Max. No matter where we're looking at the M5 Pro or the M5 Max. So single core performance here is not impacted from everything that we've seen. Now, when we look at multi-core results, this is when the magic starts to happen, because the M4 Max was already a really powerful chip. You can argue it's 25,000 points, 26,000 points. This is 15% faster. This is exactly in line with Apple's expectations. But as we, for example, just saw with that 16-inch MacBook Pro that used to start with the M4 Pro, right? Now you get the M5 Pro, and the M5 Pro versus the M4 Pro delivers a monumental 30% advantage in multi-threaded results, right? So this is exactly in line with what Apple promised on their website. They did focus more on that 30% number, primarily, well, because it looks better. But when you look at the exact comparisons they are providing, 30% is versus the M Pro, the M4 Pro, and 15% is versus the M4 Max. Obviously, the M4 Max went up to 16 CPU cores with 12 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores. So while we do have more cores, the amount of super light cores is actually significantly reduced. So the fact that we are getting this multi-threaded boost is really, really impressive. And I really hope if these new performance cores are super efficient, that now Apple has already outlined that the battery life should be about the same, but this is not surprising because these are numbers that are primarily going to be limited just by the efficiency of the single core results, right? Stuff like web browsing, email, watching videos is even going to be limited by like the efficiency of your decoders. So yes, these numbers are absolutely in line. No huge battery life improvements, but all these performance improvements that's just scaling that we've already seen when we moved up from the A18 Pro to the A19 Pro chip. Obviously, like something like the iPhone 17 Pro Max gives you better battery life because it has larger battery capacity, right? And for example, on the iPad Pro, when you move from the tandem OLED M4 iPad Pro to the M5 iPad Pro, in some tests, like battery life might have even gone down, but it's negligible. It's like 2-3%, right? But for a chip that's on a newer node, it's very clearly Apple is pushing it ever so slightly beyond that efficiency voltage curve. So about almost 30,000 points, or there are some results that point to this being like 29,900. We've also gotten more results than that, and I'm not sure why I haven't pre-opened them, or maybe I did pre-open them and I closed them again. Search Mac 17.7. I should listen to my own advice. I told you guys don't do. So this is by right now the fastest result that we have had. Almost 30,000 points and over 4,300. Now, when you look at the exact cache management, you will find that these new super cores get like a megabyte of like private cache. That's probably to isolate them from any kind of performance penalties that come from using a chiplet architecture. So there's a CPU chiplet that also has like the media engines, the neural engine and stuff like that. And then they're connected to the GPU chiplet over a fast interconnect. And that GPU chiplet has a lot of system level cache, right? So obviously because the GPU needs a lot more cache for its work. So this is why I'm pretty sure the CPU will still be able to access that cache, but because the introduction of a chip interconnect comes with some performance, some latency, and especially some efficiency penalties, Apple has a different cache hierarchy here, or they have a bit more L2 cache to put it more correctly. So we have these numbers. Will this show the GPU results if I open it up here? So you see this one is even like a faster performant one versus other M5 Max chips. In terms of GPU, you see obviously the ones testing CPU are also testing GPU. This is why these numbers, ever since the numbers were down to like 3, they've been in lockstep, and now we are at 9. So one thing that I've seen some people really get all high and mighty about are the OpenCL scores, right? Now, people will say, well, you shouldn't compare like a Mac Metal score with an OpenCL Windows score, right? Whether it's an NVIDIA GPU, an AMD GPU, or a Qualcomm GPU. We did already look, obviously, here at the Qualcomm numbers that show OpenCL results, right, which obviously perform much more meager. But this is horseshit. So the results that you're going to see from your Mac are gonna be rooted in this core, right? Over 220, almost 230,000 points. In fact, we have one metal score putting it above 230, 232,000 points, right? And when we look at our Mac chart, right, we just looked at multi-core results where the M5 Max outperforms, of course, the M4 Max, the M4 Pro, and also that 32 CPU core monster, the M3 Ultra, which most likely is limited by its bandwidth interconnect, and of course, on top of it all, its older architecture. Well, when you look now at OpenCL, you will actually see it's faster here than the M3 Ultra, and in metal, it's actually ever so slightly slower than the M3 Ultra, but don't forget, this has 80 GPU cores. This is 40, and we are not using here anything that takes advantage of the neural accelerators, so for AI tasks, including big AI tasks that are going to be very important for games, like Metal FX upscaling. That's something that benefits from the neural accelerators, whether we're looking at just the faster neural engine or whether we are looking also at, of course, the neural accelerators directly per GPU core, right? That we're not looking at the architectural advantage of next generation ray tracing support and next generation dynamic caching and mesh shading. So this is actually most likely in most games gonna perform equally to better than the 80 core enabled M3 Ultra that, yes, if you remember correctly, even though it's an M3 chip, launched actually last year. And versus the M4 Max, we're seeing a 22% improvement over the M4 Max. That's in line with Apple's 20% improvement. It's smaller than the gains that we saw on the A19 Pro versus the A18 Pro, and smaller than the gains that we saw coming from the M5, from the M4 to the M5. The reason for that is while the architectural improvements are absolutely the same, so from A18 Pro to A19 Pro, from M4 to M5, and the core counts are the same. A18 Pro has 6 cores, A19 Pro has 6 cores, M5 has 10, M4 has 10 cores, M5 has 10 cores, M4 Max has 40 cores, M5 Max has 40 cores, right? The chiplet architecture, my hope was that it would come with 48 GPU cores. There is, though, a reason to believe that we might be bandwidth limited, and the main reason why this gain is smaller than the roughly 30 to sometimes 35% improvement that we saw, for example, coming from M4 to M5. Let me find those numbers. So we have M4 here at around 55,000 points, and then when we look at the M5, you also see it starts beating last gen M1, M2, M3 Pro results, right? And that one is at 75,000 points. So that's like a 35% improvement. And that's partially because the A18 Pro and the M4 use 7,500 mega transfers per second memory. The A19 Pro and the M5 now use 9,600 mega transfers per second memory. And with that, they obviously gain in architecture and in bandwidth. The M4 Pro and M4 Max already used 8533 mega transfers per second memory. So while that's still a nice like 12-13% jump towards 9600 mega transfers per second, that's not going to be as substantial as the well over 20% jump or more even, going from the 7,500 mega transfers per second. Oh, it's yeah, well beyond that. Let me quickly do the math. So 9,600 divided by 7,500. That's a 28% gain in bandwidth, while versus the M4 Pro and M4 Max versus 8533. Yeah, that's a 12.5% gain. So very clearly, this architecture could get more performance potentially from higher bandwidth. Apple could have used something like 10,700 mega transfers per second memory. That's something that has been used for now about 2.5 years on high-end Android devices. Obviously, we are now looking at the future of LPDDR6. The very first ones that Samsung promised would actually be 10,700. So there's like no performance gains, but there are already LPDDR6 modules in the works with 12,000 mega transfers per second, or even up to 14.4. At this point, it would be giga transfers per second, right? So big gains of potentially like 50% faster memory bandwidth. This is why, like, I know a lot of people are asking for like larger memory buses. The M5 Max is already a 512-bit bus chip. The M4 Pro is a 256-bit chip. If you look, for example, at the highest-end AMD processor, right, the Strix Halo variant, that also has 40 GPU cores, similar to the M4 Max and the M5 Max, that one is actually a 256-bit chip, and it's built on around 8,000 mega transfers per second memory. There's going to be Gorgon Halo that's probably going to go to like 8533, maybe even like around 9600 mega transfers per second memory. But that would still, with the same amount of GPU cores, let's ignore any kind of like GPU architectural differences between AMD and Apple. Obviously, Apple has huge advantages in how fast they can process AI, how well they process ray tracing performance numbers and stuff like that. Obviously, it hurts that the Mac doesn't have the gaming support to actually test it out as widely as we see, for example, like Hardware Unboxed or Gamers Nexus or even Hardware Canucks, who thankfully do at least some Mac testing. Or when we look at laptops, somebody like Just Josh on YouTube, you'll find that obviously with Windows you have thousands and thousands of games that you can compare between Windows devices, and these games are actually relevant. They're AAA, they have DLSS baked in, they have FSR built in, they have XeSS built in. Sometimes you can even just add a DLL file and upgrade it afterwards. So on the Mac, it's unfortunately not quite the case. Even a game like Cyberpunk 2077, which has gotten a pretty good port on the Mac side, unfortunately hasn't yet been upgraded to, as was promised months and months ago, to Metal 4. So that would be the latest Metal FX upscaler. It would be integrating Apple's own frame generation technology or frame interpolation, basically running the game at a certain frame rate and then doubling that. It would also not have the latest denoising technology that is based on the same upscaling as Metal FX, which, for example, on DLSS was introduced now a while ago on like DLSS 3.5. It's called DLSS Ray Reconstruction. So I need something to drink. So there is a lot, unfortunately, that speaks against Macs for gaming and stuff like that. But in terms of raw performance, they are quite there. So, and the OpenCL numbers, like I know some people will say, well, they're OpenCL numbers for like the RTX 5090 mobile or 5080 mobile, right? Well, shouldn't you compare OpenCL versus OpenCL? And if you go to our Discord, one of our members is an absolute legend in the tech community. It's actually, let me actually see. Somebody posted like Cinebench numbers here. 2024, man. Why can't we get like... and like a number in Geekbench 6 that's almost like 30,000 multi-core. Hopefully that actually means we're gonna get like full 30,000 in like some after some like software updates and everything. So Nano review, if I copy this text, yeah. Thankfully, continuity works pretty well across those devices. So M5 Max 40-core CPU. Guys, this is a bit of breaking news here. Thankfully, to Who is that? It's Track Minded in our Discord, has just posted it. Johnny Sal saying, what about with the M5 Pro? Well, when it comes to the CPU results, I can actually definitively answer that, because on the CPU side, there will be a binned version with less performance. That's absolutely true. I'm not sure if any of these numbers have come out already, but on the unbinned side, so for example, what we looked at, that entry 16-inch performance, that's going to be the same 18-core CPU, 6 super cores, 12 performance cores, 4.6 gigahertz on one core type, 4.4 gigahertz on the other. It's just going to be paired with a much smaller GPU chiplet, down from a max of 40 GPU cores down to 20. Batmobile saying, Apple always had good CPU numbers. The lag was GPU until M4 became real. Now we're seeing companies like Capcom and the creators Cyberpunk test the water. Yeah, I would argue the M3 generation was architecturally what was needed for Apple to deliver the necessary stuff. I mean, when you look at raw numbers, like M1, by the time it came out, like, don't forget, like Panther Lake, for example, right now looks pretty impressive. And before that, Lunar Lake was okay. Before that, it actually becomes really, really difficult to find really good integrated graphics. While sure, there are big changes from M1 to M2, that's going from 8 GPU cores to 10, that's going from that's going with 50% faster memory, right? So massive 35% jump in performance. Then to the M3, that's the same bandwidth, that's the same core type. But it is now, it's Apple's first GPU architecture that supports hardware accelerated ray tracing, mesh shading, for Apple dynamic caching, which is very important on an SoC seemingly. And they keep refining it, which helps them utilize big gains, even when memory bandwidth improvements are not as big as the actual gains of the architecture. And then they kept refining all of this with every subsequent generation. Yes, M4 is very cool in that regard, because M4, it has a good GPU uplift of like roughly 20% of the over M3 in many ways, way more in like ray tracing and stuff like that. But in terms of like real world gaming numbers, it seems to outperform that. And part of it might be when in an overall like power constrained environment, the even more efficient CPU cores, which obviously have much higher max performance, but you don't need all of that performance to like play a game at like 60 or 90 or even 120 FPS. Like, you just have a lot more power that you can then give to the GPU, even in like a constrained environment like the MacBook Air, where there's a lot more throttling, a lot more issues with heat and stuff like that. Riley saying we need the A19 Pro and the Neo. Well, that's what we're gonna get next year. And this is something that I've advocated even while we were reacting to everything. So A19 Pro comes with multiple benefits. It's not only faster and better architecturally, obviously N3P versus N3E, next generation RT, mesh shading, dynamic caching, all that stuff. But obviously it has the neural accelerators on the GPU, and it comes with faster memory, and it comes with support for faster storage. So it's either faster PCIe lanes or more PCIe lanes. And I think all of that would bring up the MacBook Neo to be definitively better in most ways, like performance-wise, than even like an M3 MacBook Air. Maybe not multi-threaded performance quite, but close enough, and so much better in single-core performance, so much better in the GPU architecture department, that I would actually ask people to buy the MacBook Neo over like a heavily discounted M3 MacBook Air. And there would be absolutely no question about like M2. I already recommend a MacBook Neo over M1 MacBook Airs. With M2, it's depending on if the price is exactly the same. I do recommend the MacBook Neo. If pricing is in the benefit of the M2 MacBook Air, I recommend the M2 MacBook Air. Okay, so One of you asked about the M5 Pro. I want to briefly show you some of these numbers, just so you know. So I already told you that the CPU would not see a big difference. Obviously, there will be a bint M5 Pro, but in terms of the GPU performance, you will find that it is lower, but it's not quite 50% lower. This is a 20 GPU core version. You see, it's the fully enabled M5 Pro because it is the one with all the CPU cores, 6 super cores, 12 performance cores. You see, the L2 cache here is really large with 8 megabytes. That's the way Geekbench is currently reading it. And so 17.6, 17.9. So these are the M5 Pro MacBook Pros, if you want to look them up, whether it's on Geekbench or some other platform. And we are getting, I mean, like if we are looking from 23, 23 divided by 100, we'll just round it up to 140. Yeah, this is 65% faster. So that's still obviously a big difference. And it makes sense because this has twice the GPU cores. This has twice the memory bandwidth. But I would bet that Apple probably clocks those GPU cores a little bit lower to like hit a more efficient part on the efficiency voltage curve, right? And that is what allows them to put something this powerful in a MacBook that, let's be honest, while cooling is better than it was in the past, it's not Apple's strong suit. They do not use vapor chambers. The amount of copper for their heat pipes and everything that they utilize is relatively small if you look at gaming laptops from Asus or Razer. So yeah, these are the numbers for the M5 Pro. Johnny Zile, hopefully that's a help for you. Obviously, the M5 Max is going to be the main focus because it is the highest number and the scaling will make mostly sense. But I actually do acknowledge that this time around, I think that I'm not sure about the sales distribution between like the M4 Pro and the M4 Max. I think, except for maybe some potential for the AI craze to take over, at which point that will push people towards the M5 Max with its 128 gigabytes of memory. Max memory, you have to pay for it. But I think that for like a lot of programmers and people who are very CPU limited, they'll just buy the fully enabled M5 Pro with its still 18P cores, still probably more than enough memory with 64 gigabytes, which is actually a little bit more than before. The M4 Pro supported 64 gigabytes, but it only got that option on the Mac Mini. On the M4 Pro MacBook Pro, it actually maxed out at 48 gigabytes. So just so you know, if you are like mostly CPU dependent, the M5 Pro is a better chip in every way than the M4 Pro. It has more single core performance, more multi-threading. It has all on top of that, the GPU architectural stuff. It has more bandwidth, and it seems to have no downsides in GPU max in battery life. So yeah, absolutely consider. And its max memory amount is higher if you're comparing M4 Pro MacBook Pro versus M5 Pro MacBook Pro. So hopefully that helped. Let's actually look at those numbers for the M5 Max. Do they show any comparison? Okay, so it is everything is the Max version. They do still have the old naming, P cores and E cores. Obviously, these are now supposed to be S cores in a way. Not to be confused with escorts. Dead jokes that are kind of more adult. These are super cores. These are performance cores. uh shading units. Okay, this is not a result. Plasma Void 67 currently watching it up to 2x. I appreciate your streams and passion for details and good products. Cool stream. Thank you, Plasma Void. To anybody who's watching and enjoying this, we are about an hour into the stream. You're watching it at 2x, and yet my main worry throughout the stream was that I talked too fast. Right? I almost want, like the chat, for example, we had less people watching yesterday, but the chat was more lively. I was kind of worried about, like, while I was doing all the analysis, I was like, man, maybe I'm too fast or whatever. Maybe people are just not, like, coming along. So thank you so much. Apparently, you can still watch me at 2x that. That's amazing. Kudos to you, man. And yes, to everyone watching, enjoying, you guys know the drill by now. YouTube Jazz, as we call it around here. Subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting. I love interacting with your comments. It actually might help slow me down while I actually bring myself back up and up with the coke. And of course, if you want to support me directly, you also know the drill. Super chats or super stickers, or become a channel member or a Patreon supporter. Shout out to all our MarkTech Pro Max level supporters, Jonathan, Mac Maximus, Steve, and Angelica. So we see that the specs are pretty correct here. 128 gigabytes max memory. That's obviously something that the reviewers tend to get some of the highest configurations, so that makes sense. We have 614 gigabytes per second. So as I outlined, that's 12.5 times faster than on the previous generation. Obviously, if anybody's curious about the M5 Pro, just divide those numbers by half. Max memory 64 gigabytes. Max memory bandwidth is 307 gigabytes per second. And if you want to know the numbers for the M5, then divide that by half. Though obviously those numbers now have been out for a while. That's where you would be looking at roughly 150, to be more precise, 153 gigabytes per second of total memory bandwidth. We have a transistor count. I'm not sure if they would be able to know that. So, but the clock speed seems correct. 4.6 gigahertz for the super cores. Wouldn't call it a base frequency. I would call it the top frequency, but okay. But when we actually look at the numbers, can we please CPU open link here? M4, where's M4 Max? Maybe I can find it without scrolling too much. I actually think that M4 Pro is here a good comparison, because as I outlined, M4 Pro is getting the bigger percentage lead improvement of up to 30% in multi-threaded performance. M4 Pro, that's 12 cores. That's with... where's M4 Pro here with 14 cores? I have to... Wait, can I just not search? CPU... Wait, why? Why is that the interface they're going with? The Lumiere guy saying a refurbished M4 Pro is around 800 euros more than the M5 Pro with the same configuration. I'm not sure if the price bump is worth the performance increase. Oh, you mean it's probably 800%, 800 euros less. It depends. It truly depends on what you do, how much future. Like if you're doing anything like AI locally, that's just something that's going to benefit you tremendously with the neural accelerators and everything. But, oh yeah, I see a message, less than the M5 Pro, thank you. But overall, my bet would be that, yes, if you can save 800 euros, that's very much worth saving your money. You will not feel that much difference. You have the incredible still single-core performance of over 4,000 points on the M4 Pro. You still got great multi-core performance. I mean, where is it? M4 Pro here. Well, we can actually look at M4 Pro here in both max configurations here. Compare. We can have more numbers that way. So, oh my God, I hate it when they just don't give the freaking number. So, wait, can I already search? Because that would probably be the best thing. M5 Max. Oh, yeah, they do have them. So, okay, that makes more sense than to compare it. 15% more multi-core performance, exactly as Apple promised, which would also line up with 30% more. This is Cinebench R23. Interestingly, Cinebench 2024 does not give us a big GPU uplift. Wait, or that's multi. Oh, that's still the CPU test. I'm always confused with Cinebench because they bring up the GPU numbers here. Single core. Wait, what's the difference here? Because 16 core is the same as the 40. Oh, these are the. Oh, sorry. I confused myself because I was reading left to right, but these are different tests. Now it all makes sense. So you have 13% more performance here on single core, 15% more performance with multi-core. This totally makes sense. And Cinebench 2023 shows you the exact same single core improvements, but in multi-core, it only shows you a 7% increase. We do not, unfortunately, have Cinebench 2026 results baked in, which obviously is the latest test. It's even better optimized. Unironically, Cinebench R23 is kind of bad for reading ARM cores. This is why in Cinebench 2024, Apple has even bigger leads versus like x86 chips. What I'm gonna zoom in, guys, because I think with the 1080p stream might be a difficulty for you to read the numbers. But as always, guys, let me know if there are any issues. I do call you out and to support me, but I also call you out to help me, help you, help all of us have a better experience. If there are any audio or visual issues, right, let me know. If there's any delay, there's obviously going to be a little bit of delay between what I say live and what's in the comment section. That's intended, that's part of the stream. But if there are any audio issues, if there are any visual issues, if there's any stuttering or too much buffering, I hope it works well for you guys. So I'm not saying that this number is invalid, but given that we have one of them that shows the exact number that we kind of expect to see, it's not surprising. And when we look at single core numbers, this is actually where Cinebench R23 and 2024 in terms of single core are actually outliers here. So these are not numbers that is even really promised by Apple. Apple's promises come primarily for the multi-core results. But in Geekbench, we've already outlined it, right? This is roughly 4,000 points, sometimes between 3,950 and 4,050. This is roughly 4,300. Can go up to like 4,350, and that's where you get your 8%, right? 4,000, but not quite 4,400. In terms of Geekbench multi-core, this is where we see exactly the number that Apple promised, obviously, 14% more. So that all makes sense. We do not yet have benchmarks like Passmark and stuff like that, which obviously I will try to cover. Blender is going to be very interesting because we know that M5 architecture is better in Blender, not quite like the doubling and everything that Apple promised, but still also so much better, especially in performance per watt versus what AMD offers. It's even better than the latest that Intel offers with Panther Lake, and with NVIDIA, it's way better in performance per watt, but in terms of raw performance, you can just go higher unless you are potentially memory limited, and that's partially because NVIDIA's dedicated GPUs do benefit from having a lot of memory bandwidth thanks to them using GDDR7. And they are also quite cache rich, so the effective amount of memory bandwidth is both on the RTX 4000 and then especially then the RTX 5000, which also gains GDDR7. That's huge. So this is something that Apple cannot quite compete with. You'll also see, of course, that these chips consume much more power on the high end. We're looking at like the RTX 5090 mobile going up to like 160 watts and stuff like that. So that's something that Apple, just from a cooling perspective, wouldn't even want to achieve because it just wouldn't work and wouldn't be able to. But also when we look at GPU at real world results, where Apple pretty much wants you to have about max performance when unplugged. For the CPU, usually there's zero difference between running your Mac on battery. On GPU, in some scenarios like Cinebench, there can be a limit, but usually it's incredibly small. It's nowhere near like the 50-60% gaps that you get like with an RTX 5000 mobile. KSP Wonders doing an amazing shout out, and this is actually with 2 likes just coming in saying 27 are watching and 23 likes. You're correct, man. Encouraging everyone to leave a like and keep commenting. You guys see, your comments encourage me to find new things to talk about and analyze. Obviously, we do not have that many numbers right now. They're just started coming in late last evening, right? So we are less than 24 hours into these numbers coming in. Obviously, some people, like, interestingly enough, the reason why we have these Geekbench scores is because the people running Geekbench, actual like content creators, reviewers with hundreds of thousands, millions of fans, they do not use Geekbench Pro, which costs a bit of money, which would allow you to hide your result. If you are running a Mac Geekbench score, it like the free, the cheap version, whatever, it's automatically updated, and that's why it's logged on the website. If you are looking at Geekbench Pro, these reviewers would actually be able to hide those numbers, and we wouldn't be able to see them until like they actually like decide to post their reviews. But apparently they still do not want to buy Geekbench Pro, or they might not even know it exists, and I hope they don't find out. The Lumiere guy, I'll just be using it for photo and video editing and coding. It should be noted that when it comes to video editing, there are more encoders on the M5 Max. Just as before, you basically get double the ProRes and double the H.264 and HEVC encoders. You get no AV1 encoders, but at least decoders for like efficient YouTube playback and things like that. So that depends. Video editing still won't be super heavy limited by the M5 Pro, depending on what you do. Like for most YouTube video stuff, it's probably fine. Like if you're working more on like 3D graphics for your video stuff, even using a tool like Apple's Motion graphics app, that will scale. It will be faster with the M5 Max, but it will not be prohibitive for you. You're saying your coding is super heavy but can be fixed by more RAM. Well, that's something that I've already mentioned, the comparison to last generation. You can, the M4 Pro Max, MacBook Pro maxed out at 48. This is maxes out at 64. And obviously Apple's RAM storage prices are quite extensive. I think you'll be fine. Oh, you're saying you'll go ahead with the M4 Pro. Yeah, obviously if like something like 48 gigabytes of RAM is enough for you. Like in terms of CPU performance, yes, it will be faster to create a final coding project on like the M5 Pro, like especially on M5 Pro versus M4 Pro, the gap, as we've now discussed multiple times, from M4 Max to M5 Max is smaller. So just something to keep an eye out on. Cinebench 2024. I assume these are numbers for M4 Max and no such numbers yet for M5 Max. So we have 100 megahertz faster. Again, these are not E-cores, these are P-cores, and instead of 2.6 gigahertz, they max out at 4.4. I would assume during multi-threaded tasks, they actually are clocked still significantly lower than this. L1 cache. So L2 cache shouldn't really be changed, but the L2 cache, well, the system level cache is now obviously on the GPU chiplet side, which you should be considering. And yeah, like TDP numbers, this is something that I do not even take Nano Review's word for from already released and heavily benchmarked and tested chips, much less like a chip that's yet in pre-release stage. Is there any benchmark for the base M5 Pro 15 core 18 GPU? Guys, share anything, or you can just tell me on what kind of websites it might be. I mean, I can look into this. This only has CPU stuff, right? Can I do laptop GPU rankings? Oh, by the way, I understand this video is a little bit all over the place, but we do also have now, of course. So this is completely wrong. This is wait, is this wrong at 2.3 teraflops at FP32? It should be higher, but like, so the MacBook Neo, where are CPU results? Okay, so yeah, these are not even that high numbers. What was the number for the MacBook Neo? Was it 17.5? Oh yeah. Okay, so we can take a little bit of a breather from the incredibly high M5 Max numbers. We'll have a look afterwards at Geekbench AI tasks and things like that. But just for the MacBook Neo, which obviously runs on an 18 Pro chip, that's the same chip that was on the iPhone 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max, that comes with a limit of 8 gigs of RAM, that comes with a limit of 7,500 megatransfers per second memory. So this chip is definitely compromised by Mac standards. But when you actually look at single core results, you will find that it performs really well. It performs almost on the level of the M4 and definitely higher than the M3. So when we look at Mac single core numbers, you'll find that the M4 here ranges anywhere from like 4,700 roughly to like, obviously on the M4 Pro and M4 Max, which are clocked higher. But it's not a big difference. It's 100 megahertz, but it's still noticeable, and that is what gives you up to like 4,000 on the M4 Max, which obviously has other potential benefits of just a larger die and everything. MFMI K3 wondering if the price to performances was upgrading the chip to the 18 core configuration. Yeah, that is going to be interesting. There are going to be obviously some considerations between the 16 core M5 Pro and even the 32 core M5 Max, because especially on the M5 Max, that lower end bin configuration also comes with less memory bandwidth because it only occupies 384 bits. So not the full 512 bit. It has basically fewer memory modules, therefore also lesser memory capacity. We can look that up here. So if we go, so obviously with the binned M5 Pro, right? This is only a choice for you. And it's $200. Again, you should look up the prices in your own region to make sure that like you're not just enticed by the dollar pricing, which don't include like taxes. Obviously, I cannot speak to the conversion rate to your currency, the value added tax in your region, all that stuff, right? So I would argue on like 15 core CPU, 16 core GPU upgraded to 20 core GPU. Like this should still be faster, or this should compete very well with the this is actually something I need to look up. What cores are being cut down here? Because if it as far as I know, this is 5 super cores and 10 and 10 I have a million tabs open at this point. KSP1 is saying, what mouse do you use? How to avoid the jittering while scrolling with a non-Apple mouse? You cannot fully avoid it. I saw that yesterday when I was doing or the day before that, while I was doing the compare page, scrolling just works. Wait, when I click this, yeah, it still jitters no matter what. So I'm using the Logitech MX Master 3S for Mac. It does give you the option to either scroll completely freely, right? Or shouldn't that do? Oh, I believe I actually mapped this to something else, but I can scroll either fully freely, which is my default consideration. You see, it still has a little bit of a jitter because it is, while the mouse scrolls freely, it actually still is recognized in intervals. Or usually when you click on this locks in and then it does like more dip, 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 right? So it's a good mouse, but I still prefer something like the Magic Trackpad. It's just that I needed it for work at some point. It became a really good addition for streams. It takes up less space than a Magic Trackpad. And over time, I just forgot where my Magic Trackpad is. I was gonna go to tech specs here. Thankfully, Apple's tech specs are actually easier to find than like Samsung's. But when we look here at the M5 Pro and M5 Max, this is one thing that I had already mentioned. So the M5 Max with 18-core CPU and the bin 32-core GPU starts with basically reduced memory bandwidth, 460 versus 614. So basically a quarter of a reduction. But then when we look at the M5 Pro, oh yes, the 15 core comes with 5 super cores and 10 performance cores. So this is not a big cut, to be honest. Now, it might look like, oh, you're losing like one super core. Now, depending on how Apple handles clock speeds, you probably could just clock this higher and get to this almost this performance, but I doubt Apple would want that. So I'm not saying that is going to be the case. You have the GPU limitations, but overall, at least the memory bandwidth is not reduced in any way. So that's a benefit. There was a time with the M3 Pro when Apple was doing very weird stuff when it comes to memory bandwidth, not so much here. And let's go back to our nice sheet here. So in terms of single core results, again, this is the architecture basically of the M4. But interestingly enough, I would actually argue it delivers pretty nice result, because when you look at the clock speed, you will find that it clocks quite nicely here, right? Thankfully, we even have a comparison here versus the M5, but obviously architecturally, the closest sibling to the A18 Pro are the M4 family of chips. So this is clocked almost 10% higher from, what is that clock speed here? What was it, 4.04? 4.04 to 4.4, right? But you don't get anywhere near like a full 10% improvement, at least not on the base M4. You get closer to it on the M4 Max and the M4 Pro, which seem to be just like handling the power necessary for these high clock speeds a little bit better. KSP saying, I found a software for $3. It's called Fix Mac Mouse. It has an option for smooth scrolling, and it's working properly during trial. Well, then I highly, like, if that's an issue that really concerns you, I think this mouse, there's also a successor. There's the MX Master 4. I think it's going to do quite well for you. Shed1 saying, since the M5 first came in the Pro, would it throttle worse than the M4 on the Air? You mean, wait, what are we exactly comparing? Are we comparing like the M5 MacBook Pro versus the newly released M5 MacBook Air? because like I don't like the time difference between devices is only based on like pricing and shit like that, and what chip is actually earlier ready to go. But overall, like in terms of throttling on the base version, well, we obviously have those numbers already, right? In terms of throttling for the M5 on the M5 MacBook Air, that's something that has to be tested and probably will be tested, right? By the likes of Max Tech and other channels like that. So you'll have give it like Kishati. Sorry, I'm bad with reading names, especially while I'm also like half in my head with numbers. Give me an exact comparison, like M4 MacBook Air versus M5 MacBook Air, or M5 Pro, whatever, right? Just make it like a V, like a versus statement, and let me know which devices with which chip you think the throttling would occur, right? And then I'll tell you what I think, which obviously would be an educated guess and not necessarily knowledge. Okay, but we did want to react to the A18 Pro chip here on the MacBook Neo. So if you want the identifier of the MacBook Neo, that's Mac 17,5, up to 3600 points in single core, 3550. You're saying Air versus Air. I do not know. Like yes, my out of my head, I would argue that probably the M5 MacBook Air might throttle a little bit more than the M4, but that's only with everything else completely equal. Apple might have added a little bit more thermal headroom, even if it's just by 5% or something like that. They wouldn't tell us about this. They usually tell us when there's like a big difference, like for example, when they introduced that copper Apple logo on and the graphene heat shade on the M4 iPad Pro. They talked about the vapor chamber on the iPhone 17 Pro, but they do sometimes make small adjustments that they don't talk about, which are just necessary for a new type of chip. Yux is saying M5 Ultra 4400 single core, 50K multi-core. Well, the single core probably wouldn't change. It probably would be just the same 4300s. Yes, multi-core, I could see that happening. Just having two of those 18 core dies, 36 cores. Obviously, there would be a little bit of penalty because of the interconnect. I guess Apple would then call it still Ultra Fusion and things like that. Yeah, that makes sense. If you want to make millions, use the Metal AI interface in the game. Okay. That's a nice recommendation. Hey, if you know this works, then make those millions and send me a nice super chat. So this is single core performance higher than the M3 by like well over 15%, but not quite on the level of M4. Which is completely fine, obviously. It's probably going to run way more efficient even here thanks to the higher clock speed. And of course, with the GPU, well, first, let's go deal with multi-threading, because this is obviously, of course, with its much smaller number of P/super cores, it is going to be noticeably hindered versus other Apple chips. You'll see that it's actually lower here than the M2, but higher than the M1. I would argue it's probably exactly in between the multi-core performance of the M1 and the multi-core performance of the M2. Like this, and this is not just from the core count, obviously, because this has 4 P cores, 4 E cores. This is 2 P cores, 6 E cores. 2 P cores, 4 E cores. So it has fewer cores, but also the A series of chips is just tuned for much lower power consumption, right? So that's a big part of the story. If Apple wanted to, they could probably overclock this to like 4.2, 4.4 gigahertz, right? But they don't want to. They put a relatively small battery. well, actually, a really small battery, right? It's smaller than the battery in the 13-inch iPad Pro, right? It's 36.5 watt hours. That's well over 50 watt hours on the 13-inch MacBook Air. That's versus like the 39 watt hours on the 13-inch iPad Pro. They probably don't have much cooling in it at all, mostly relying on just the fact that you have a giant aluminum body. Don't forget, like when you look at, for example, something like the iPad Mini deals with an A17 Pro chip better than like the iPhone 15 Pro did, right? And that's primarily from its larger aluminum body. And that's something that Apple wants to bank on. So don't expect these A-series chips to start getting like big overclocks for Mac compatibility or whatever. Apple really wants to milk that advantage. It's a cheaper chip because it's smaller, gonna make the motherboard smaller, less complex, won't support Thunderbolt controllers like the M series chips, so you can deal with 10 gigabits per second ports, even just one port being 10 gigabit, the other being USB 2 with 480 megabits per second, right? Slower storage on less PCIe lanes, logistically needs way less storage configurations, only 256 gigabytes and 512. Has all the technology necessary for like good video watching with its video decoders and things like that. Has good efficient networking and everything, even if you use like an older Wi-Fi 6E modem. I assume next year Apple will upgrade it with an A19 Pro chip, more memory, faster storage, and a better Wi-Fi 7 enabled modem. Yeah. Oh, sorry, my voice is just sometimes going to be disappearing. And in terms of GPU results, we're just going to be looking at Metal. There are no OpenCL numbers here, right? We'll have to scroll quite a little bit, and we'll find that it's basically equal with DM1 in Metal. This is, of course, from it having 6 GPU cores. This has 8 GPU cores, but this is also... in terms of memory bandwidth, they're very close. This uses 7,500 megatransfers per second on a 64-bit bus. This uses 4,200 megatransfers per second, but 4260, but on a 128-bit bus. So the DM1 actually, for being a relatively old chip, still gives you a usable amount of memory bandwidth. This is 60 gigabytes. This is 68 gigabytes of memory bandwidth. Architecturally, there won't be absolutely a relevant comparison. Obviously, it has no hardware accelerated ray tracing on either M1 or M2. It has no mesh shading, no dynamic caching, and for all the stuff with AI and better upscalers, it has no neural accelerators. It will have much slower neural engine, which will also help with those tasks and help take some load off of the CPU. So this is going to be definitively a better chip because it has way better single core performance, slightly better multi-threaded performance, similar raw graphics performance, but just on a much better architecture, much better auxiliary features, whether it's the media encoders and decoders versus the M1. I would argue versus the M2, now it definitively loses in terms of raw GPU performance, because this one, obviously, it went up from 8 GPU cores to 10 GPU cores. It added 50% more memory bandwidth. So you can see how it almost directly scales, even just from the bandwidth in a way. But Apple also allowed the M2 chip to use a little bit more power than the M1. So that's partially where some of that difference comes from. This is going to consume less power than the M1, way less power than the M2. And yes, versus something like the M3 that already has hardware accelerated ray tracing, mesh shading, dynamic caching. Now, these are all older generation of those technologies, but only one generation older than here. but it will not be able to overcome that 33% extra raw performance on the M3. I'm pretty sure you can get even higher. You can see that. Oh, this is the binned version even, right? So yeah, with 10 cores, it's just way faster. So let's look at the fully enabled M1. You see, there isn't even that big of a difference between the 7 and 8 core, but probably because of some power shenanigans that Apple does, right? It might have 1/7 more GPU cores, but probably won't consume that much more power, maybe like 5 to 8% or something like that, roughly half of what the extra core count would account. Obviously, yeah. And then, of course, if we look at the M4, right? Now we're dealing with 2/3 more cores on the same GPU architecture. We're looking at double the memory bandwidth. That's where we see the scaling come from. Color Ferguson joining the chat. Hi to everyone. Hello to everyone. Guys, we are now about 1.5 hours into the stream. Don't want to be like... annoying, but please, if you're enjoying this and you haven't yet liked the video or haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. Comment. I love reading your opinions, your agreements, your disagreements in the chat, getting your suggestions for more content, future content, better content, right? And I also left the link in the to our Discord in the description of this channel, so please join over there. We discuss all that stuff in even more detail. Color Ferguson joining and then immediately saying, have a good day. I hope you're not leaving. But if you are, still nice of you to come in. And of course, if you want to support me directly, you can do so via super chats or super stickers or becoming a channel member. Shout out to all our MarkTech Pro Max supporters. And you can also support us over on Patreon as well. So this is now the MacBook Neo. We obviously talked a lot about the M5 Max. We talked about the CPU and GPU. We talked about the GPU of the M5 Pro and how how the M5 Pro is gonna scale against the M5 Max in terms of its GPU performance. Just gonna slightly adjust my Mac. I don't want to increase my brightness because that's gonna be very, very stressing on my eyes. Just letting you guys know. Let me get back to those results. Yeah. So, and then the other thing that we unfortunately do not have yet too much of are AI results. So, and we have quite a bit of discrepancy here. This is on the GPU, this is on the neural engine, right? So this is very interesting because I'm not sure what the exact scaling might be, like this is 128 gigabytes. Okay, so these are both the fully enabled ones. Okay, so the GPU result, obviously, if you get the 32 core version, or if you're getting the obviously the M5 Pro with much fewer GPU cores, whether it's 16 or 20, that's going to have its downsides. But when it comes to the neural engine, or I should say downsides versus this one, not versus this one. So in terms of neural engine, the results are actually very comparable to even the KSB. Yeah, you got that right. AI? Well, goodbye, Riley. Well, again, I'm talking about AI not because I think that everybody's gonna run like Kimi K 2.5 or Qwen 3 and all those models. Like we're probably getting like a new DeepSeek soon, like a DeepSeek version 4. I'm not saying you will probably be running those models locally through MLX and stuff like that, but there are other benefits, like most notably technologies like Apple's own Metal FX. So I can actually like, wait, what are these numbers that I have here? Oh, this is the M5 Pro, and that's running on the GPU, and that's the and that's the M5 Max running on the GPU. So, oh, we are actually seeing that the scaling is not that strong. Now, it could be that these are early numbers, but yeah, with the neural engine, I actually I hate that they separate the Geekbench AI results here. Um, And like they don't even have the same feature functionality for the Geekbench AI, like in terms of the website, right? Like you see how like Geekbench 6, you can score this differently. You have benchmark charts, right? If we look at Mac charts again, right? It's for CPU and GPU, and the GPU is separated into OpenCL and Metal. We don't see that for AI, and the same for iOS. That's such a bummer. You can see also, by the way, versus those 3600 numbers, there's a little bit of an advantage versus the despite the same clock speed versus the A18 Pro on the iPhone 16 Pro. It's just for you to keep an eye out on that. Might be that there's just a little bit more power given to the chip. Might be that. These results are just on the lower side, and maybe on the on most real world iPhones you'll actually get a little bit more performance, but just explaining some stuff. So but I'll just like geek search A19 Pro. I think if I search I can actually like do Geekbench AI Core ML neural engine. So you will see this is higher than the iPhone 17 Pro Max. These are numbers that line up very well with my own numbers on my iPhone 19 Pro Max. So my guess is that Apple probably clocked this like 10% higher, and it benefits from faster memory bandwidth. These numbers make a lot of sense. I can even look those up for the M5. That's M5 Max. So a lot of numbers being posted, as you can see here. If we look at Geekbench AI, Apple M5. Okay, so it's the exact same scaling of the M5 versus the A19 Pro, where you get a bit more performance than the A19 Pro. But this is not a special neural engine. This is not a new. Did I say 19 Pro Max? It's the iPhone 17 Pro Max with the A19 Pro chip, KSP. Yeah, so these are numbers that line up very well. I would assume there probably will be higher results here as well. So no groundbreaking new neural engine, just the one architecturally very similar to one in the A19 Pro, probably clocked a bit higher, still a 16-core version, probably benefiting from more memory bandwidth on the M5, but then the scaling just stops after that, right? So this is good, and in fact it's very good by most industry standards, especially when it comes to efficiency. It's still what Apple chooses to run a lot of your local AI tasks on. Now, when it comes to actually utilizing the GPU for these tasks, where did I have all that? This is the M5 Max. You will see that the GPU is actually slower for quantized core. So this is for basically single precision would be FP32. This is FP16. This is what Apple's entire architecture is optimized around. And you can see that while Apple might not specifically support FP8, because if they did, the quantized core would be close to double that. There might be some memory bandwidth limitations and things like that, but that's roughly what you would expect. At least you would expect over like 70,000. But then on the GPU, where there is absolutely no hardware accelerated FP8, there is better int8, but int8 is not FP8 to say the least, right? It's still okay for running certain tasks. You can see how like PSSR 2 on the PlayStation 5 Pro competes quite nicely with FSR 4, which is built for FP8, while on the PlayStation 5 Pro, it's most likely being built on Int 8 because the hardware itself does not support it. It has way better Int 8 processing per compute unit versus RDNA 3 and 3.5, but it's not quite on the level of RDNA 4. So this is a discrepancy in hardware that results in a discrepancy in how a software feature has to be programmed. And for Apple, we see that Apple does not do FP8 natively on the GPU, but they have very nice FP16 performance. Nicely for FP16, you actually see that the GPU here is in lockstep with the performance of the neural engine, right? And then on the neural engine, you get more performance with FP8 tasks, but then the performance falls off the cliff for something that's more tuned for gaming, and that's FP32. And you will actually see that this number is not that high on the GPU for Apple. Apple does not do dual issue FP32. For example, that's something that AMD introduced on RDNA 3. It's something that I believe NVIDIA introduced on the RTX 3000 series, or maybe even before that. So this is something that Apple is not pushing that much. They seem to think that FP16 and dual issued or double FP16 might be the sweet spot, both between something like gaming, but especially AI. We'll have to see if over time something like the M6 generation, the A20 generation introduces something like hardware accelerated FP8, in which case you would see this quantized number not being actually lower than this number, but being much, much higher. Ideally double, or maybe like 70-80% faster. And if they do the same on the neural engine, you would see that gap further widen. But you'll see, of course, the neural engine is just much more optimized for these AI tasks. From everything that I understand, it will still struggle because its amount of cache and everything is still much lower. But it is obviously very capable architecturally. It's still way better than anything that AMD does in terms of SoCs and things like that. So yeah, there's plenty to explore. And of course, we also have numbers here for the M5 Pro. This is for the GPU here. Can I export this here? Or you know what? I'm not actually going to export this. I'm just going to copy the link. I'm just going to paste it over here because I'm not a freaking Neanderthal. So in terms of, wait. Oh, yeah. This is the M5 Pro Max. Wait, where's my M5 Pro result? I thought I dragged the M5 Pro result. Oh, okay. No, I dragged the M5 Mac result to have it next to the M4 Pro. So these are numbers that, to me, don't make perfect sense because it seems like there's just improper GPU scaling. Now, by the M5 Pro that we see here, it's the 18-core version, so that would mean it's also the version with the 20 GPU core version. If we look at this one and it having like 128 gigabytes of RAM, we know this is the 40-core GPU version of the M5 Max, so there's a good distance between those two. But the scaling is just nowhere near that, right? We have like roughly 30% more on the single core. We have, I can compute that. Is that also 30%? 43, 315. I'll do it exactly by 35, 424. No, it's 22%. Okay, so my first instinct was correct, but then I was like, no, why would they scale differently? But yeah, apparently they... Oh, no, wait. Wait, did I get it wrong? No, this is 30%. I'm not that stupid. Like, I'm really good at math, guys, I promise you. 26,935 divided by 2373. Yeah, that's 27%. Yeah. Okay, so there is a gap here, notably. And then here we have roughly 20% difference once again. So you see that the scaling just makes no sense considering we do have double the GPU cores, and these are both run on the GPU. So maybe and this is why I don't want to, like, I want to react to all these numbers, but I don't want to pretend that they're written in stones. There might be like macOS updates that will still account for that. There might be still like updates for the actual benchmark apps. But just showing you like what this GPU scaling looks like here for AI tasks. It's definitely not as good as what we saw for actual GPU, where the M5 Max was 8% faster than the one on the M5 Pro. And the last thing in terms of benchmarks, unless you guys have something to suggest before we get to reacting to Mrwhosetheboss Galaxy S26 Ultra review, is actually still Nomad. This is not still Nomad Lite. I would love to also see some ray tracing benchmarks specifically, but this is a very demanding ray tracing benchmark. This is a very demanding raster benchmark, and you have 4153 on the new M5 Max MacBook Pro with 40 GPU cores. And I looked up, so thankfully to anyone who posted this in my Discord. Once again, guys, go to the Discord. You'll have a lot of fun over there. I promise you that. If you care about stuff like that. And this has 3416. We're looking at roughly 22% difference. That's the same difference that we saw on when we compared the higher range Geekbench GPU results for the M5 Max versus the M4 Max. So Apple's promise of roughly 20% more, and then Apple promised actually more in like ray tracing tasks and like real world games. So we'll have to test out stuff like Cyberpunk 2077, but this is where we are at right now with all these numbers. If I go to the Discord and see if any one of you has posted potentially more, I'm gonna wave to say hi to TrackMinded and thank him again for posting those nano review numbers for Cinebench. I'm looking them at the iPad, even though my Discord is right here. I'm quite stupid. Let us see. There is a little bit of Apple news that I would like to cover. Just a quick fire round just to keep you informed. A lot of things that we basically kind of knew would be true are true, thankfully. The iPhone 17e has 8 gigs of RAM. Obviously, with the iPhone 17 having 8 gigs of RAM, it wouldn't be getting 12 gigs of RAM, and with the iPhone 16e already having 8 gigs of RAM, it wouldn't be getting a downgrade. But it is worth considering because you never know in the current crazy world with RAM and storage pricing. When it comes to the MacBook Neo name, which is obviously a first that Apple uses it, unless you count like the new iPad, the third generation iPad, the first one with a Retina display. Apple basically said we wanted something that felt fun and friendly and fresh, and it felt like it really suited the spirit of this product. I think some may draw parallels to the MacBook product that you're referencing, to the 12-inch MacBook of yore. But really, you know, MacBook Neo is an entirely new product that was, again, reimagined from the ground up. So my own speculation on Twitter and in the Discord was actually that the Neo name refers to it being new, yes, but also that it's designed to attract new people to the Apple ecosystem. Switchers coming from much cheaper devices, people who are getting their very first device in general, definitely their first Apple device, or maybe it's their first Apple MacBook, right? Maybe they were iPhone, Apple Watch users, AirPods users before it, maybe even iPad users. Now they want to try out the Mac. So this is Apple's explanation here. Is basically it's fun and friendly and fresh. I think my explanation works better, but who cares? This is the correct explanation. This, as I said very quickly in the beginning of the stream, there are revised third betas of iOS 26.4 and iPadOS 26.4. So these are not beta 4s. This is the second version of beta 3. There are no super big changes internally, but just keep that in mind. Feel free to upgrade if you want to. Usually it's recommended. And Apple also has new public beta, so they seem to have some confidence in those releases. Do you think they mocked Windows in their product page? Yeah, I think when they like align those colors, right, almost like in the Windows logo. I'm not sure if it's mocking as much as it's just calling a little bit attention in like a cheeky way. Like I hate the idea that all of these competitions are like inherently negative in spirit, but overall, yeah. And after like some bullshit that we've seen like Intel try to pull by getting that old like Mac versus PC guy for their ads, I do understand why Apple wants to clap back. Intel tried to push Panther Lake as being in some ways superior to Apple Silicon. Obviously, we reacted to like the Qualcomm numbers, and obviously these numbers, while cool, they're still substantially lower than that of Apple Silicon in many ways. And architecturally, Apple has better ray tracing, better handling of AI, all that stuff. Usually way better encoders and decoders. In terms of encoders and decoders, there is a top 3 in the industry, and that's NVIDIA, Apple, and Intel. All of them do some different stuff differently well, but they are the top dogs. Qualcomm, MediaTek, AMD, they're just way inferior in that regard. And the other one, it's a little bit of a bummer, but it's also not too surprising. Apple, well, it's kind of shocking but not surprising. Apple disappeared the 512 gigabyte RAM configuration from the M3 Ultra from their website, which I hope would mean that the M5 Ultra is not too far off, but there are still 256 gigabyte configuration. Obviously, an M5 Ultra would not be using the same memory. It would be using 9600 mega transfers per second memory, while the M3 Ultra actually uses 6400 mega transfers per second. It took me a while to remember it. The M4 Max uses 8533. So this uses substantially slower, older memory. And my guess is that Apple simply stopped ordering more of that memory. And that's why, and since the 512 gigabyte version, I would assume it's actually the most popular on the M3 Ultra. And that's because if you can afford 256 gigabytes, you can probably stretch your budgets to 512. It's also the version that Apple sent to most reviewers and stuff like that. People like Alex Ziskind on YouTube. Yeah, but if you wanted a 512 gigabytes Mac Pro, you might have to wait until an M5 Ultra, if that version even reappears at all. Maybe Apple will keep it limited to 256 gigabytes. So there are no big other news here. Nothing like no new products or anything, obviously. Okay. That way, guys, we are about 2 hours into the stream. A lot of chip talk today. O'Reilly saying he only uses Macs with 1 terabyte of RAM. Guys, we've been following the Galaxy S26 Ultra ever since Samsung introduced it. We reacted to SuperSaf's camera comparison between the S26 Ultra and the iPhone. We reacted to Vadim's camera comparison. So I did want to mostly finish this up with the review by Mrwhosetheboss and some more hard data from GSM Arena. Obviously, I know chip talk is your favorite. I understand if many of you want to leave. If there's any more chip talk you want to have, I will keep talking. Obviously, by like next Wednesday, we'll have full reviews and way more numbers. Hopefully, people will also test actual games like Cyberpunk, and that will show us a lot. Like, I believe Apple at some point mentioned on their website that there will be like 60% gains potentially in like something like Cyberpunk. We'll have to see if that actually pans out and in what configuration that needs to happen. Like, is that with a lot of ray tracing? So, and if you're watching and enjoying this, you guys know the drill by now. The YouTube jazz, subscribing, liking, sharing, commenting. Consider donating a small super chat. I've been working my butt off this week with daily streams from Monday on. Took a little bit of time of work to come a little bit earlier home and stream just 1 hour after the Apple announcements. So that would mean a lot to me. You can also become a channel member right here on YouTube or a supporter over on Patreon. I didn't like the chip talk, no 5 gigahertz chips. That's wrong, Riley. Riley gets 1 extra bit of chip talk. And there was one chip here, and that's the Snapdragon X2 Elite Extreme. That one has 5 gigahertz on its prime core, while Apple gives you 4.6 gigahertz. I wouldn't even bet on like the M6 going up to 4 or 5. I would guess it's probably gonna go up to 4.8 gigahertz, probably gonna do more architectural improvements for better instructions per clock. But yeah, Riley, no 5 gigahertz for you yet. And with all that said and done, let's see what Mr. Who's the Boss, who will speed up to 1.2, has to say about the Galaxy S26 Ultra.
The Samsung S26 Ultra is the most...
Okay, that's way too fast. Good to know. And guys, let me know what the audio and video quality balance is for you. If I am too loud, if Aaron is potentially too loud, I'll keep both headphones in my ears.
Conflicted I have ever felt about a phone. It feels like a breaking point. Because on one hand, I'm peed off. They've not changed the cameras again. They've not changed the battery again.
They changed the cameras. Cameras are not just the sensor. And there are actually some sensor changes even, but they're small. Like the 3x telephoto switches to like a Sony sensor. He speaks fast. Okay. Let's go with just 1x. Oh, I think it's perfect. Okay, that's nice. Okay, so we're gonna leave it at 1.1x, and because I do a lot of breaks to react to everything, I need it a little bit faster, or I'll have nothing left of my evening. But 1.1 should be fine.
Do you want to know one of the best things about this phone? It's the fact that it's made of aluminium, again, after just a 2-year detour as titanium. Samsung is just making tiny little tweaks, while other companies are making leaps. Okay, calm yourself. What companies? What brand that you can
Xiaomi, Vivo...
actually feasibly buy in most countries is more well-rounded than this?
I mean, the UK allows you to buy, even the Xiaomi Ultra. Nah, the black shirt is me.
Besides, what about the hundreds of AI features? Who's even close to Samsung? Oh.
Everyone who uses actually Google Pixel, and you can just run AI in a separate app. I have Perplexity mapped to my action button. By the way, I have an action button on my phone, right? A power button, and a camera control button on my iPhone, right? So I can and I have double and triple tap back gestures if I wanted even more shortcuts. So yeah, there is so much that I can do with a third-party app, and it will feel almost like a first-party experience.
Yippee! More AI features, because my life was in shambles before I could...
Riley, you're definitely the black shirt, right? Because the black shirt is hating on AI.
Rewrite my shopping list as an 18th century pirate. Besides, I'm one man. How many do you think I could use? And then, are you trying to say that just because other brands like Oppo and Xiaomi and Vivo are not globally available...
I mean, and not if OnePlus is available, but OnePlus competes very poorly on high-end cameras. It's so weird because, they should just have a OnePlus Ultra at that point, right? But I guess they're kind of trying to, have the Oppo Find X9 Ultra or whatever is the actual flagship. So much for Apple removing buttons, right? Yeah. And it's actually usable, right? Consider you have all your buttons here. So if you're lefty versus righty, you're already a little bit more screwed when it comes to the power button. Yes, it can be configured with a triple tap or with a double tap to invoke cameras. but now that will compete with Apple, where Apple obviously has like long press for Siri. This also has long press. Apple has double tap for Apple Pay. So, and Apple then would be able to just give you triple tap for like accessibility stuff, which has a lot of very useful settings that you might want to tune throughout your day. And then obviously camera control gives you not just camera access, but also control in your camera app if you choose to use those zoom gestures and stuff like that. But the other thing is it gives you visual intelligence. So it gives you basically another AI button, which I know Riley will love. But and then they have the action button, which whether it's you're gonna use it as your mute switch as before, or you're gonna map it to something like I do, like to my Perplexity app. That's all options for you. And obviously double tap and triple tap on the back, I'm not sure the equivalent on Android. I do not use those myself because now I have everything I want. Previously, my action button was mapped to the camera. Now, obviously, I have camera control. So, yeah, just in terms of physical attributes, like this idea that like Samsung is notorious for giving you more options than the iPhone, like in the past, replaceable batteries with a easy removable back, SD card slots, all of those things have slowly gone to the wayside. KSP wonders, why is everything crowded in the bottom right of the YouTube app? Super chat, reactions, send button. That's because YouTube wants you to engage with everything like crazy. Even my grandma watches like my live stream, and she was like, this is one reason why I don't put my live chat onto onto my video as an overlay. Because while yes, I understand it's usable for VODs who are watching the video afterwards, but it's also just a nightmare to deal with, right? Because the YouTube app is so overloaded. If you already have my main screen, you already have my video feed. If you add also my live chat on top of that, and on some days it doesn't move at all, on some days it moves like at like lightning speed, it just doesn't make sense. Just open up the previous live chat. You can still do that. Riley saying, I have Apple Intelligence turned off since the first beta. Yeah, maybe you should give it a chance.
Samsung just gets a pass for making a worse product. But it's not a worse product for an average user. The battery is already more than enough to last a day.
So these numbers do not align with most findings. Basically every finding, and we'll get to GSM Arena's numbers, do put the iPhone at like at least 10% higher, sometimes 15% higher. And if you're using the iPhone for like from the US, like the version without the SIM card tray with over 5,000 milliamp hours, that one can give you up to like 20% more battery than the Galaxy S26 Ultra, and it competes actually quite nicely with devices that have like 7,000 milliamp hours. And then once you get to devices that have like 7,500, these then usually tend to also be the iPhone as well.
Confirmed that in our test, remember? People love Samsung cameras, and no one's out here zooming 800% into their photos to compare micro details. Like, you just gotta understand that Samsung isn't chasing numbers anymore. They're focusing on new ways to add value because they've already covered the basics. That's why we're now getting this completely world-exclusive privacy display feature. This is James Bond level tech. Do I look like James Bond to you? Do you think I've been waiting my entire life so that finally the stranger sitting next to me on the bus won't be able to see me trying to figure out?
Yeah, that's one use case for privacy display that I didn't even consider. Obviously, we made a lot of cheating jokes and stuff like that, but and there's some argument for like banking apps and things like that. I believe one of you made a good suggestion of what privacy display could be used for. But yeah, obviously, if you're a spy, yeah. Jonathan James saying, hi, big numbers today. Are you Jonathan James? I kind of always remember you being James Jonathan. Maybe I'm just stupid. You're saying, hi, big numbers today. Well, I'm not sure if you're referring to the benchmarks or to the viewership. Both would be correct, even though we are far from the maximum that we had on like Wednesday. But still, I'm super happy about everyone here.
Which Shrek character are you? It's Donkey, by the way. That's it. I'm taking this. I want to show
Donkey
you
is the best Shrek character. He has a good sense of humor.
exactly how, with cameras, for example, Samsung is falling behind. We were in the gym the other day, do you remember? Hit that PB, thought we looked pretty spicy. So we called in Drisha to take that photo, and she got this on Samsung.
Okay, there's a bit of work to do on the muscles, as I have still, but yeah, which is fine. I love people who can, like he's obviously much slimmer and thinner than I do, which is way healthier and everything. I'm losing weight, but obviously there's only so much weight you can lose very quickly without hurting your body as well. On top of that, so I am on a good progress roll. But yeah, this is actually a funny pic.
In isolation, a pretty balanced photo. You wouldn't feel like you had anything to complain about. But then she took that same shot on a Chinese flagship, the Xiaomi 17 Ultra. And it's only when you do that you realize what you're missing. Can't you see
I would actually argue functionally, they're both good. Like, there isn't actually even that much more detail. Like, maybe if you like really zoom in, but for the use case of this device, what does it say? Does it say 9.5 kilo?
how the
Wait, can I not zoom in on this? Ah, this is so stupid. Oh, it's 250 grams. Oh, it's 0.5 kilos. So it's 500 grams. Okay, now I can read it. I actually think I can read it almost better on the Samsung, which is interesting. Jonathan saying, yeah, benchmarks. Okay, yeah, the benchmarks were definitely big numbers, like over 213 GPU, over almost 30,000 multi-threaded, over 4,300 in single core. Yeah, we had some big numbers.
Xiaomi has more depth because of its larger sensor and just so much more real detail on the face, which looks a whole lot better than the over-sharpening that Samsung's tried to replace it with.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Even though in this specific image, it probably won't make too much of a difference, but yeah.
Is true when you shoot portraits. It really puts into perspective.
Yeah, okay, this is a huge difference. Which camera does this use?
How, while Samsung and even Apple, they're improving each generation, these other companies are doing it faster, and it's particularly noticeable when you're in low light. And this isn't to say that everyone should suddenly rush out and buy a Xiaomi. I'm just trying to show you what's out there so that you get me when I say that this, by comparison, the ultimate Samsung experience that we're stuck with till 2027, feels like such a bummer to me. Give me that. Look, I get it. It's not a camera phone, but not everyone wants a camera phone. It's actually nice to hold it.
But they're making decisions of a camera phone, right? They have a 3x telephoto that has absolutely no meaningful contribution here. They could have cut that off, handed those cost savings down to you, or they could have better used that money to just make the 5x better, or at least the ultra wide better, right? Which actually a lot of Chinese devices, they have super crappy ultra wide. So Samsung uses like a 1/2.5 inch sensor. This is like a 1/2.76 inch sensor. And the main sensor here is smaller than the one here, but I think this is the telephoto, but it actually has a much wider aperture, f1.4 versus like f1.8 or 1.7. So the amount of light actually captured on the sensor. Now the sensor is older in a sense, even if it's like slightly upgraded every year. It is just technologically inferior to like the LOFIC sensors that we're now getting on some Chinese flagships, which will allow them to handle HDR better, which Apple handles still better in my opinion. And like maybe in some extreme scenarios the sensor on the Xiaomi will just help, but usually Apple's and Google's computational photography will help them overtake either. One less camera hurts marketing badly, I know, but this is like a lot of Chinese devices actually, like ultras, have 3 cameras now. Now, for example, the telephoto here actually goes fully fluidly between 75 millimeters and 100 millimeters. So like 3x zoom, 4x zoom, which is not a wide range of zoom, but that's something that you can do. like, yeah, this is why Samsung really put itself into a corner by integrating the S Pen, by putting that fourth camera into the device. These are all things that eat up space. These are things that eat up into your bill of materials. But Samsung has to keep pushing them into it. They downgrade them even over time in a way. Especially, obviously, the S Pen. The S Pen is now a reason why Samsung cannot do like full MagSafe or full magnet-enabled Qi 2 charging, which, by the way, most Chinese phones don't do either. They force you a stupid case on top of you, but usually the Chinese flagships will have much better, faster wireless charging. So even if you don't put it in fully correctly, it will still charge way faster than the Samsung. It's like the problem is this device, if these devices were exactly even in price, but that would be one thing. But the Samsung is more expensive than this. It's also more, now not the Leica German model. That one is ridiculously expensive, but it's also more expensive than the iPhone. I've called it out already in prior videos, but the 1 terabyte Galaxy S26 Ultra is $200 more expensive than the 1 terabyte iPhone 17 Pro Max. Riley asking, ironically, 6 cameras when? Well, it is already 5 cameras if you count the selfie camera, but I know what you mean. KSP saying, waiting for the day where cameras need to be bought separately from the phone. It wouldn't actually be a bad experience. Like the new Vivo actually has a zoom extender that you put on, like you can do a lens for a camera. But also like Xiaomi, what I hate about it, like Xiaomi is like, oh, we have a back display, right? On the Xiaomi 17 Pro and Pro Max. Oh, we have the largest sensors. Oh, but only on the Ultra, right? So they're also kind of trying to have their cake and eat it too. They want to have like an Ultra model that's like, they also want to say, oh, we have the largest battery on the Pro Max, because obviously its camera takes up less space. On the Ultra, the battery is actually noticeably smaller. So yeah, like to me, I would love to have one flagship that does it all. That's kind of what Samsung tries to do. They eliminated the Galaxy Note for that. But in my opinion, like to me, the Galaxy S26 Ultra would ideally be the camera / just mainstream usage flagship. And then they would have a Galaxy Note that would be like the S Pen thing. Maybe even because of lower sales numbers, it could introduce some newer technology like silicon carbon a little bit earlier. That would be fun to play around with. But like fourth useless camera, S Pen, it feels so unfocused.
Device that doesn't have a bump large enough to eat dinner off of. It's slim, it's comfy, it's balanced, as all things should be. And frankly, to an untrained eye, Samsung's images really do look just.
And I would actually argue that they handle the background shadows better. So fuck me with this LOFIC sensor.
As good. What most people want is a phone that takes bright, well-exposed photos that make them look good. And the way
yeah, but this looks just better. But even then, there's some notable detail loss, like on the t-shirt. You could argue if this is over-processed or over-sharpened. And the light here is clearly handled better by the Xiaomi, so this is better contrast handling. But still, like I just prefer his face better here, but overall the image is still usable on both.
Samsung subtly face tunes and evens out the lighting. Actually, if anything, makes it better for that. Not to mention, you now have more AI power than any other Android, and infinitely more than Apple to improve your photos after shooting them.
I don't give a fuck. This I've actually commented. I usually don't negatively engage with other content creators that much, especially on the Android side, because they're like, oh, Apple sheep. This is the worst shit that I have seen. Like, look at this.
You see that guy on X who, within just a 36-second clip, took this beautiful shot of fog rolling over buildings, added a 1-sentence command to remove that fog, and suddenly the shot was sunny. All the reflections are changed, and you can even see buildings.
Yes, that's a worse image. It has no reaction, like it has no reflection in the real world. It's just basically forcing, like I could have just downloaded the Google Street View image at that point. And by the way, I can do that with Perplexity. I can take my photo very fast with camera control. I can then long press my action button, insert that photo, and use an even better large language model. In fact, I could choose between Gemini 3.1 Pro, ChatGPT 5.4, the thinking models as well. I could choose between Claude Sonnet 4.6. If I overpay, I could use Claude Opus, but why would I do that? I could even use freaking Grok if I wanted to, but I'm not stupid or a Nazi, which are they align pretty well. Riley saying a wide camera, an ultra wide, a lower telephoto like 3x or 5x, a longer one like 10x, a depth sensor, and the black and white dedicated. There is potential, right, to actually do that even correctly if you wanted to. If you made a camera phone that's specifically a camera phone, like at that point it would even have like a compromised battery. It might not even have like the absolute flagship chip, right? Because just there would be so much competition for the internal space. But that's neither phone in this case, and it's certainly not the Galaxy.
Background that you could barely see before. Very quickly it started
You
to feel...
you do not see the other detail before. Those are not, they are not rescued with AI, you dumb. They're just put on top of it.
Like, your imagination is the limit. Like, Drisha took this photo of us the other day, and I can just change my outfit to traditional Indian blue and gold. Seriously, look at that. Not only is the clothing spot on, but if you look close, it's even changed what I'm wearing in that vague, off-angled reflection in a way that...
Why? Why do I need that?
Subtly, perfectly
I do
blends
not
in.
understand, like, both him and Supersev push this AI crap so hard. I'm almost shocked that Riley is still watching.
Or this is very similar to an example that Samsung demoed on stage. Let's say you took the perfect photo of yourselves, but then realize it's missing your favorite cat. It's insane.
Wait, why would there be a cat in that image? I like cats, I can add them in... But why?
To me that you can now just pull up any other image of this cat and the AI will just merge him into that original photo, even changing the positions of your limbs. To...
What emotional resonance do you have with that image? It gets sillier as he goes on. Oh my god, Riley, did you pre-watch this? Oh god.
Make it make sense. Oh, you want to do this, do you? Fine. Let me ask you, what will you do with this never actually happened cat photo? Send it to your parents, pretend you took him on a day trip, reminisce about all those times that you did not have together. If the reason that your cat is not in your photo is that he doesn't live with you, then move on with your life. Technically, I haven't moved, just he didn't move with me. Maybe like one time a year, I could see the perfect opportunity for a tool like this. Someone says something inflammatory about Pokemon in the group chat, so within a minute you rustle up a suitable punishment image using their likeness. Does that count?
You don't need Galaxy AI for this. There are a billion AI. Like, why are people insisting that because it's integrated, it's somehow infinitely better? Like, that's like... Like something, for example, like Circle to Search, right? I will be honest, I think it's better on Android than Visual Intelligence is on iPhone. I think the UI works really fast. I think the fact that it's integrated so well into Google and everything benefits it. But here, for my average meme creation AI, I don't need it necessarily to be front and center in my iPhone. Riley say, yeah, when it came out, but I forgot to put it in Discord. Yeah, I understand why. KSB, I have an iPadOS frustration. The other day, I connected an SD card for my camera. I tried viewing the images from files. Each image opens up in preview. There's no way of opening the next image. I would have to disagree. Like, I think you can select more than that. Like, you just click on the select button, then you swipe across all the images, and then you basically, I don't know if it's the share button or some context menu thing, but then you can open up it in preview. Or at the very least, you can edit it to add all of them to photos. Which version of iPadOS are you on? I haven't used external storage in a while. I might have to try it out. Like, I still have a USB-A flash drive and I have an accessory for like USB-C to Type A. I'll have to see. Brent Only saying the only thing I would want to see Apple do from Android is a wider app grid layout and expandable photos and home screen. Any clue if they'll ever do that? Like, my speculation is they probably aren't rushing to do it, but I could see them adding like one thing that I don't see them doing is like being super like Android and giving you a ton of customization on this. But I could see them offer a second option, right? A compact like a grid where like, what is it now? Actually, it's four wide, right? Maybe a more compact version would have 5 wide. Especially if it might adjust with like text size or something like that. Like, who knows? Nobody expected by like iOS 14 for Apple to ever play around with widgets. And when you think about like color customization on icons and like color tinting and making them transparent, like that was also very untypical for Apple. So who knows what might happen.
Cyberbullying? Gray area. And changing that fog photo to sun. Oh yes, that's why I woke up at 5 a.m. in the morning to capture this beautiful miracle of nature. Should I put it as my wallpaper, just to remind me of that time that the lighting just hit different? That's harsh. I mean, I get
That's entirely correct.
your point that merging real shots with AI is not useful per se, but harsh. It's a bit of fun. You can't take it too seriously. And
Yeah, but then if it's a little bit of fun, then it's not really like, there's always a little bit of fun to every like gimmick. I understand. Not everything in your iPhone is particularly necessary. And I could even see how people argue, well, multitasking on Android, that to me is actually an essential feature or whatever, right? I would be like, okay, I can kind of accept that. But once we start to talk about all of this AI stuff, especially since so much of it you can do with even a free chat GPT, like I have Perplexity Pro, got it as a gift from PayPal for a year, right? I can choose between different models. I have much more task that I can do. I can upload way more files to it. Like recently my mom sent me like her written notes from like a meeting at work she had, and she asked me, is there a way to like put them nicely into like a document? And I tried like OCR, like text recognition on the iPhone. It actually recognized a lot of the text correctly, but there were a lot of words that are very specific to her work that it just didn't do that well with. And I didn't want to copy and paste them into a document, whatever. So I just did Perplexity, added all those images, told me to create a doc, like a Word document. It gave me actually an option to download it both as a PDF file and a document, a docx document, right? And it worked really well. I'm not even sure how far the Galaxy does with stuff like this. So, yeah.
there are some legitimately useful outcomes that you can get from this tech that are not just slop. Like, look at this. Our wallpaper. I had the idea of a hand-drawn image of me and Risha floating around together in space.
Is this not slop? How is this not slop? Like, if this was like written, if this was like drawn by your kid, or by maybe you were on a nice romantic walk and you saw like, you know, one of those street artists who was do you want me to draw you? Or you know how those guys are. Oh, your girlfriend is so beautiful. Do you want me to draw her? Or do you want me to draw you guys? Right? Like, there's an emotional connection to that image. There is also a permanence to that image, right? It's something that somebody drew, like life in that moment. That's how we looked, at least to that person in that moment. That's the talent level of that person when it comes to drawing, right? That's what I connect with. This is still slop to me if it's AI, right? If it has no emotional resonance. I'd rather a locally private advanced Siri. We need to value human effort. I fully agree. Now, I have to say, like there are some things that will be too large for local, especially before we go with like 24 or even 32 gigabytes of RAM on our phones, and we get the efficiency of 2 nanometer chips and native acceleration for FP8, FP6, maybe even FP4, right? Then we can use models that are by right now would be like 30, 40 gigabytes, and they would suddenly fit into like 16, 12 gigabytes on top of like just using another 10, 12 for your phone. Well, now that's your 24, 32 gigabytes. So I'm fine with having some online AI stuff. I'm even fine with paying for some of it, but I hate pushing it as like a core selling feature of a singular hardware product when I can get this even better from so much different stuff. KSP is sharing all the images to preview, just opens up the first image. Oh, then that's a bug. Then that's not like, because if you can select them, but you only can, yeah, then that's a bug in 26.3.1.
How crazy is it that all that needs...
Share it out with Apple, right? There are ways. Like, you would have to look it up. I forgot. I used the feedback app, but I have the feedback app because I always have betas installed. So let them know.
Now is 10 seconds of finding any photo of us and
even
a one-sentence...
You can even like record a screen video of how this happens, right? You can make a screen recording and share that to Apple, or at least screenshots. Like, I'm not sure if they accept video. I always send them screenshots of if I have bugs.
Prompt. Even the generations themselves barely take any time anymore. This S26 Ultra is so fast. Or like, in a few weeks' time, I'm planning an evening with my friends. So all I need to do is invite friends to Sophisticated Dinner, Natural History Museum, London, 7 p.m, formal attire. And then we enter the date, March 15th. Oh, it cooked. Look at this. It's even got little dinosaur skeletons in the background. Read it and weep. We seeing the same image. If you actually sent me this as an invitation, I think you were a moron.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's good self-criticism. I would be like super annoyed because I wouldn't even know it. Like, wait, what is this? Why and what?
What time? Where am I meeting you?
Yeah, exactly. Like everything about this, it's like it's a sketch. I would be like, wait, is this an actual event, right?
Expecting me to just deduce from the photo? I don't think that's the all-knowing Mother Bixby. Where am I meant to meet the person who sent this invitation?
Siri, Bixby just committed seppuku while she was getting that effort.
Later.
God, I love Bixby.
I couldn't find any data to search for.
How do you...
This is always something that I find really funny about these AIs. Like, you can give them like a binary question, like in terms of like there is either data for this or not. I'm not saying the answer is necessarily yes or no, right? But basically the AI should be able to just say, oh, I don't have the data for this, I'm sorry. And it shouldn't take any effort for the AI to know this. But because all of this is probabilistic bullshit, even the way it interacts with your phone, it just gets confused so much. And I hope, like, this was the one thing that I actually think Apple was doing really correctly. But I also understand why it hit certain limits. When Apple was originally creating the new Siri, they were working on two versions of it that kind of would work intertwined. One would be an algorithmic, like classic machine learning one with binary outcomes, very simple for tasks that already exist, that are very lightweight, like create a reminder, create a note, create a timer, right? All that stuff that should just work. And then whenever it's a more complicated or a more like interconnected question and task, it would go into LLM Siri, use more RAM, potentially defer to the private cloud compute servers. Apple ultimately decided to go entirely LLM Siri and get rid of that older, in a way, probable deterministic Siri, and I really hope it doesn't result in Siri getting slower, because for the things I mostly use Siri, when it's not a data query, which I might send to ChatGPT, right, which requires the web anyway. But when I ask Siri, like, make a timer, make an event, send a message to this specific person, like, I don't usually ask follow-ups. I don't need it to be super deep or complex. And if it fails, then I'll just do it myself.
Think I feel. Not to mention, what kind of invitation doesn't tell me what I'm invited to? Look, the way I see it, there are two kinds of smartphone AI tools. One is AI that...
Well, ideally, you would create that image, right? And then you would still create your own SMS for this. But now the fact that the device actually has system level control, but chose not to enact any kind of system control, right? Because after the query he asked, the correct response would be, what people do you want me to add to this event? When is this event exactly taking place beyond the time date, beyond the date?
Makes what you already do quicker, easier, better. Things like the automatic translation of incoming messages. Things like how these assistants are starting to get better at understanding natural language. Well, in theory. And this Now Nudge feature, which, let's say someone asks you where you are.
Which has been basically a failure thus far in the Pixel 10. Like, let's hope integrating Gemini 3.1 Pro will make it better, but it's just still not there yet.
To pull up where you are so that you can send it to them quickly. This kind of...
That's, by the way, like... if somebody asks you where you are, like in iMessage, Siri automatically suggests that you add your location. And then it actually adds like a full map link. It doesn't do it in text form. Again, this is something that gets so much better if it's properly integrated and not totally reliant on a potentially dumb AI.
Automatic AI is very useful, but it's just no phone right now is doing it well enough that it actually changes how you use your phone.
Okay, that's correct.
Like the
So
more you
the
use
black
this
shirt
Bixby
is
assistant, the more you
100%
realize
correct,
the
yeah.
annoying, weird limitations of it. Like when I ask it how well reviewed this London restaurant is, it answers telling me about a restaurant on the other side of the world in North Carolina. And Now Nudge needs, well, far too many nudges to actually get you to where you need. The amount of time I have spent trying to get this feature to be useful.
The same experience as with the Pixel 10 Pro. It's a feature that simply isn't ready yet. It's the one feature because it's something that Apple basically wants to do through personal context, which basically goes through your data, indexes everything, your old messages, your photos. That's on top of course, of better context recognition for your messages and what's in your photos, your email, your calendar entries, your reminders, right? And that's what personal context with an LLM-based Siri would be able to do. But Apple has delayed it precisely because they know that this stuff isn't ready. When people were talking about the new Siri, like half a year ago, the going rumor was that it was like 67% there, right? Which is obviously to go from 66% to even, let's say Apple standard was 85%. Let's not even say 100, right? That's a monumental leap. That's why I disagreed with John Gruber, who said that it was entirely false marketing because even getting to 66% is still already impressive. But then after that, Apple reworked. As I said, they went originally with that dual-pronged approach to Siri. Then they unified the two series, right? And that's why it's taking longer. That's on top of course, building not just their own foundation models, and not just their own private cloud compute servers, but building their own foundation models on top of Gemini and even using some of Google's own servers that are built on their own TPUs.
Honestly, I don't even want to talk about it. The second kind of smartphone AI is all of this stuff.
Wait, why is this video like 1/4 AI?
The way to use. That's things like the image editing, things like the writing tools to change the style of your messages. And the problem with these is if you actually care enough to want to use them, then there will always be better tools out there. So you generated us this wallpaper, right? You know what? Well done. Great looking image. But did you check the resolution? No, but I can check now. Well, I did.
It's usually, what, is it like 1024 by 1024?
It's a 1024 by 10...
Yeah, hey, no pre-watch. I just know that that's what free ChatGPT puts out. So I guess that's like I know I can force perplexity into higher resolutions, but I'm not sure what is if there's a maximum.
1024 1 megapixel square, meaning that this just launched Samsung feature specifically.
What Riley is correct though. What did like Samsung present other than AI for him to react to? Well, he could have gone more in depth on the cameras, but I assume some of that is still gonna come. Like exact battery life numbers, which I mean he did with that cross-device comparison.
Made for this Samsung phone.
KSB, are you saying I'm the genius because I knew that it would be 1024 by 1024? That's my version of 6.7. 6.7, 6.7. I'm too old for this crap. Nope, they're not gonna be Gen. What is it now? Is it Gen Z or has it moved further? There will not be such memes here.
Doesn't generate images.
You have infinitely more likelihood that I will do like references to Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and things like that, like not to like 6.7.
Right aspect ratio or resolution for this Samsung screen.
I know Riley desperately wants me to play Subway Surfer next to while I'm watching a video, but that's not. Well, maybe at some point I'll try it.
How sloppy is that? This ability to make invitations. I've tried it again and again and again. And frankly, if you actually want to invite someone to an event that you know they'll be
Riley
able to
already
find,
saying
you
Subway.
really should
It's
just
time for
use
Subway
Canva.
Surfer.
Every time that you
That's
AI
the only
edit
thing
or
that can
merge
save
two
this
photos on
channel.
you lose 30% of the resolution. That's enough of a quality hit that you might as well have just bought a Galaxy S10 to take the photo and then use the money you saved to buy yourself a real cat, which will only produce slop on occasion. Samsung's really trying to push this Now Brief feature as a way to stay up to date.
Which is still like your calendar events and your weather, which for me, unironically, I use that, but I don't need a brief for that. What I do is I use Apple stacked widgets in iOS, and I have a stacked widget that has a weather widget, a stocks widget, because I'm obsessed with numbers. By the way, guys, we have a terrible, not very good day on the stock market. Oil is up by 8%, $92 for Brent crude. The Dow Jones is down 1.15%. Euro to US dollar is okay, holding steady at about 1.16. Apple is down 1.56%. Nvidia is down 1%. So yeah, and I have all those widgets non-stacked on my iPad because the screen is large. So I have a weather and the stock widget, which have always been historically Apple's most pushed widgets. And then I have a calendar widget and I have a battery widget for my stuff like connected AirPods and my Apple Watch and things like that. I rarely check that, but it's still just there and it looks quite pretty. Yeah.
Everything. It tells you the weather, what's coming up in your calendar. It'll recommend you YouTube videos. But why do I want this? If I want to watch YouTube, I will go to YouTube and I will rely on the extremely powerful, sophisticated algorithm that it uses to make sure that just the right videos end up on my homepage.
And I have YouTube history disabled, so I don't get any guys, just so you understand how absolutely serious I am about not wanting AI to dictate to me what I should be doing with my day and whatever. Even without like AI, right? I have always disabled for years now YouTube history, because obviously with YouTube history comes a recommendation. So my Now page is completely empty and I just rely on my subscriptions. And once I click on a video in my subscriptions, or I'll just search for something, I'll then sometimes look at the suggestions under that video. KSB saying, yes, I am a genius. Well, you guys know the drill. We are 2.5 hours into the video. We're probably gonna watch this for another 15 minutes. If you're watching and enjoying this, and you haven't yet done so, subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it out with anybody you think might enjoy it. Comment live. You guys see, I love interacting with a lively comment section, but also comment afterwards because that tremendously helps the algorithm, the almighty AI algorithm. And of course, you can support me directly via super chats or super stickers. Even a small donation goes a long way to help me keep this up for you. That wasn't meant sexually, I promised. And of course, you can become a channel member here on YouTube or a supporter over on Patreon.
As opposed to, however, Samsung's decided that these 3 things are what I need to see right now. One of which being my own video, or how they show me my special
Maybe it was bad. Maybe he needs to fact check himself.
moments from the day before, featuring a
And you see, it's weather and calendar on top. You can so easily do that without any AI bullshit on just your main screen with widgets.
100 times long-range zoom shot right into Drisha's eyeball. Yes, I love looking into her eyes, but
Not like
not
this.
like this.
Yeah.
The problem
Yeah, okay, he has a good sense of, or his writing team has a good sense of humor, but this is a good video. I like it a lot more than some of his previous videos, even though I don't like the white shirt guy, but it's a good idea for how to handle a video like
from the
this.
fact that if you're using AI that is on device, then it's not very capable because this is a tiny little computer that can't run the most powerful models. And then if you're using cloud-based AI
Brendoli
features,
is saying, do you play any games with how bad Windows is? Might just chimp to PS5. I have a PS5 Pro. PS5 Pro about to get a really huge update. Who knows? Might even have launched already. But like PSSR 2, much better upscaling, much more in line with FSR and DLSS on PC side. Looks fantastic in like the new Resident Evil Requiem. If you check out the video by Digital Foundry on this. I do not play that much these days. I'm very busy between work and private life and doing these streams. But I bought like the new Sons of Sparta, the new God of War on my PS5 Pro. It's like a 2.5D game. It's not that great, but it's still a good lore exploration. Beyond that, some of my favorite games are like God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok, The Last of Us, both Part 1 and Part 2. I'm not one of the people who hates on Part 2. I really like the Uncharted series. Guys, is there a trend here? I like first-party Sony games, right? Not everything. Like, I'm not a simp for, like, Days Gone or anything. But, yeah, these are, like, I love me a good, strong story, beautiful graphics, and a good game. Oh, yeah, of course. One of my absolute favorites, Ghost of Tsushima and now Ghost of Yote, because not only do they have those beautiful graphics and strong story, but they also have one of the best gameplay loops in all of games, in my opinion. Yeah, Brandon Donnelly saying you saw the update once you get the PS5 Pro now potentially. Yeah, and it's something that I can talk about on this channel as well, right? Like I know a lot of you would love to see just more AAA game support on Mac. I've a little bit given up on that just because like I have my PS5 Pro, I'm gonna get the PS6, I'm gonna get the PlayStation 6 handheld. It's just a lot of money for them to get a Mac also then with 4 terabytes of storage at the very least, because that's how much I have in my PS5 Pro. I have 2 terabytes of integrated storage and a 2 terabyte NVMe SSD inside, right? That's way more expensive on a Mac. The optimization max scale on the PS5, you get like something that's deliberately tuned for your hardware. So I can talk more about gaming in general, and sometimes I do play stuff like in time to time we'll play something like Vampire Survivors, and I'll keep talking to you guys, and then some of you will be very impressed by how far I can get while still being super engaged in the chat and everything. Riley saying you hate on Part 2. A lot of people do. I do not blame you for that, but it connects with me. KSB, the only thing that keeps me off on switching to PS5 are Steam's discounted prices. Well, the other thing that might push you to PS5 now is that it's been now confirmed by Jason Schreier, Nate the Hate, and some other notable PlayStation leakers, is that PlayStation is going back to making their single-player games PlayStation exclusive. So previously they ported a lot of stuff like God of War, Horizon, The Last of Us to PC, Ghost of Tsushima. But for example, the new upcoming Saros game from Housemarque, Ghost of Yote, which launched late last year, they supposedly do not have PC ports in the work anymore. So to play those games, that's now only on PlayStation again. Brent only saying, I'm in finance, but most stuff is web-based and Excel. Might switch to a Mac. Do you think general workflow is a bit better on Mac than Windows? Yes, I do. And I'm not one of those people who have always used only Macs and only felt like the golden side of Apple, and I couldn't even imagine using Windows. I have Windows on my Windows 10 PC at work, and it's still fine for like Word and Excel, right? My first laptop was a very premium Windows laptop. When I had my iMac as a teen, I actually had Windows and a boot camp installed. I've always helped people set up Android phones and Windows PCs and laptops, and never struggled with Windows by itself, but just from the end result, Mac has always appealed to me more. When Apple still had those like heating issues with 14 nanometer Intel processors, when Apple had like those those butterfly keyboard issues, I didn't buy a MacBook, but I did wait until the M1 Max Apple Silicon 14-inch MacBook Pro, and I've been super happy ever since. Riley saying Windows is trash. I still use 10 on PC. Well, yeah, Windows 11 is not helping. But if you look at recent gaming benchmarks by like Hardware Unboxed, you will find that actually Windows 11 now performs notably better in many games because the drivers are just written much better for Windows 11 than they are for Windows 10, even if Windows 10 is technically supported.
Then they're going to be heavily limited because they cost these tech companies money, and no one's charging for smartphone AI yet. So you end up in this situation
I actually
where
would like them to charge, right? For the super premium, like you're saying, oh, they don't charge. Well, they kind of charge indirectly, like your Google with Gemini and Perplexity, which are the AIs in this phone, right? They do charge you if you want higher than 1024 by 1024 images. You just don't get those images in the app. Now you have this integrated semi-paid for AI, which is on the cheaper side. But for the better experience, you now have to go to the separate app, create a separate subscription, and that's like a so much worse user experience than just getting that separate app with that separate subscription to begin with. KSP saying it's just to avoid their exclusive games to be played on the next-gen Windows-based Xbox and the Steam machine. So the Steam machine is also going to be competing, obviously. Yeah.
all you're actually getting on phones are toys. The AI features here are nothing more than the little free trial game CDs that you...
No, they are better. A lot of this stuff is legitimately like baked into the device, like audio eraser, audio mixer. It's just that they are not that good because a phone doesn't even capture, even an iPhone with like 4 separate microphones, because these microphones are so small and because of how much your phone is just subject to the outdoors, like your microphones are not fully clean, you might be moving your hand, which already creates some side noise. Yeah, these are actually tools that I consider better than whatever he talked about before.
To get with magazines back in the day. But I want to be clear, my problem with this phone is not that it has these features, because it's not perfect, but it's still a lot more than
it's that these AI features are not transformative yet.
The rest are doing. My problem is, why are we getting what feels like a software update instead of better hardware? Why didn't they improve the signal quality to keep up with the latest iPhones? I'm on literally 0 bars right now. Are they not seeing all these other companies running circles around their cameras? Did they just forget that?
And these are some things that I feel like a lot of people just don't even consider, right? Like speaker qualities where Apple and Samsung are usually top dogs. Maybe they will be like the occasional gaming phone with stereo front speakers that competes. But like haptics is so much better on iPhone. They literally sacrifice a good amount of internal space for like... for their haptics, something that Chinese devices don't really do. Like OnePlus advertised their like super advanced haptics at some point. Did that really take off? Did that result in like Xiaomi and Vivo caring about it? Right? Like there is a lot of like small, like all the buttons that the iPhone has now, which are actually usable and are nicely configurable in software. Like all of that stuff, I feel like gets overshadowed by like bigger camera sensors and bigger batteries. but then you actually use your device throughout the day and you'll find some stuff missing. Even anti-reflectivity, the Galaxy S24 and S25 Ultra have industry-leading anti-reflective coatings. The iPhone is a little bit behind, but noticeably ahead than those than those Chinese devices. Scratch resistance, even though they use like Corning glass, the iPhone now with Ceramic Shield 2 is like another level of better scratch resistance. So you can watch the Jailbreak Everything video on this.
Allowed to change their batteries. Did you watch the battery test we did? Were you even there? Because I was for over 14 hours.
Okay, so this is a good chance for me to point to a website that I highly recommend if you're a tech nerd. They're very Android friendly, but they're not biased. So this is the Galaxy S26 Ultra review. Lab tests. Display brightness is ever so slightly brighter in max. It's the iPhone just is here capped at the full 1000. I don't know how they conduct this test. Obviously, the iPhone is rated for like 1000 is Apple's typical brightness. But when you even look at the iPhone 16 Pro, that actually reached the promised 2000 nits. For some reason, the way they conduct this test, the iPhone does not reach the promised 3000 nits, even though when I go outdoors and there's actually extreme sunlight, my iPhone gets super bright. And I compared it to the Galaxy S26 Ultra in the shop, and my iPhone got way brighter. And yes, this was with privacy mode turned off and display switched to max and everything, right? So this test is a little bit misleading for both the iPhone and the latest Xiaomi's, but for Samsung, they tend to be more representative. They tend to scale nicely year over year. I'm not sure, like it's because the Galaxies probably have this like manual max brightness mode. And I think if you enable it, then it's easier to push them into this, even if the outdoor brightness technically doesn't require that. On the iPhone, because it's still all auto brightness, even if you have very strong sunlight or light around you, if the phone thinks that it can compensate for that with 1000 nits, it will go to 1000 nits. But in the real world, I felt it go to like well over 2000. I know that because it got noticeably brighter than my 15 Pro Max. So the privacy display, they point out that obviously your pixel density is reduced by using it, your brightness is reduced, but then the actual test battery, right? This is 1.5 hours less than the iPhone with the smaller battery capacity, right? And then you actually look at it, and in most test, right? Because who the fuck does phone calls these days, right? This is the one thing where the Galaxy leads. And then in gaming, the iPhone has just like a monumental over 20% lead. In web browsing, it gives you 2.5 extra hours. Just in video watching, because this is very much like limited just by display efficiency and decoder efficiency, they are now close. And then you see the Xiaomi 17 Ultra, right? 6,000 milliampere hours. Worse battery life in many ways than the iPhone 17 Pro Max that has a 5,088 milliampere hour battery, right? Worse in gaming. Now, interestingly, a lot higher in web browsing, but whatever. And then it really takes like these 7,000 plus milliampere hour monsters to beat the iPhone with even sub 5,000 milliampere hours. KSP, just to avoid... Okay, I read that already. So I just wanted to point out that his numbers, well, yes, the S26 Ultra, it has a more efficient panel. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 5, 8 Elite Gen 5 is going to be a bit more efficient as well if you don't push it to the max. Now, I have some questions regarding performance because I don't think that's something he's going to cover in a lot of detail. Because obviously it has the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5 for Galaxy, the best name for a chip ever. So you see it has slightly higher single-core performance than these other 8 Elite Gen 5. It even has higher multi-threaded performance than something like the iPhone. It absolutely creams the Pixel 10 Pro XL. And 2.2 is not cross-platform comparable. In terms of sustained performance, Samsung made a big deal out of the improved heat transfer on the Galaxy S26 Ultra. They said it's their largest vapor chamber. However, we did not find any meaningful improvement in our CPU and GPU stress tests compared to the previous generation. Moreover, thermal throttling appears to be worse now, with the CPU dipping below 50% of its max performance. Same thing with the GPU in the 20-minute long 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme stress test. And don't forget, Wildlife Extreme is an older test that doesn't stress the GPU's latest architectural features. Yeah, KSB, I do not think that the Steam Machine is going to be super successful. It has some bad limitations. It has RDNA 3, not even 3.5. It's very questionable if it is going to get a good port of FSR 4. Like, it has terrible ray tracing performance. It has 8 gigabytes of VRAM. It doesn't have a lot of memory bandwidth because it uses GDDR6, not 6S, not 7, on a 128-bit bus. And its CPU is like a mix of some Zen 4 and Zen 4C cores, which is okay. It's still going to be faster in single-core performance than like a PS5 or an Xbox Series. But it's just like, it's also, that CPU is also limited at 30 watts. So it's just like... And in the current market, I'm not sure how cheap they can make it. If they could make it $400, I would be very forgiving for it. But I think at $500, it's just like, I would recommend at that point people get a PS5.
By the way. And honestly, even though the battery size didn't go up, this phone lasted a very long time thanks to a more efficient chip and a more efficient display. It beat out last year's Samsung, it beat out the iPhone, it beat out Xiaomi's top-end device.
He's the only one who believes that it beats out the iPhone. Like, we saw the iPhone comparison, right? And the iPhone beat the Xiaomi Ultra. It does not beat the 17 Pro Max, which has obviously an even larger battery than the Ultra, because the Ultra sacrifices internal space. If you look at the Xiaomi Ultra, here it actually beats the Galaxy. Oh, it does not beat the iPhone here, but I think I saw some results where the 5088 milliampere hour iPhone was compared, and that there it actually beat it. But it will probably depend on what exactly you're testing, right? You pay for the PS Plus subscription? Yeah, I actually pay for PS Plus Premium. I like the demos. I like the classic games. I like seeing what's in PS Plus Extra. And I don't feel even bad about saying I don't mind supporting PlayStation in that regard, because I do get still my money's worth. Obviously, I'm not throwing free money on them, but I do like the vision for gaming that PlayStation has more than any other company. I do like that they still focus on better hardware, just like Xbox, but they focus way more on games and especially exclusivity. Xbox publishes a lot of games nowadays, but that only came after buying Bethesda and Activision Blizzard. They don't cultivate studios from the ground up, and they don't acquire that. Well, they did acquire some smaller studios, but then they screwed it up, which Sony does too. They recently very much screwed up with Bluepoint, but Bluepoint was also fucked by From Software, which I think is wildly overrated. Kill me. Whatever. And I do like their focus, which I think Nintendo focuses even more on games, but I happen to connect more with the PlayStation games, and I happen to respect Sony's push for better, more modern hardware than Nintendo putting out an 8-nanometer processor in 2025 in a handheld where efficiency is even more crucial than in a standard console.
While being one of the coolest phones in the thermal testing. I mean, the charging speed
Yeah,
is
he's only the only one who finds this. Again, Samsung's cooling is okay, but it's not industry leading.
Now at up to 60 watts of power, it's actually starting to feel like real fast charging. And this is the only phone where you can have all of that while them also somehow managing to fit the S Pen inside. This right
Which
here
is still downgraded and is also the reason why it doesn't have MagSafe or G2.
Is the greatest writing implement in the world. It's literally the only pen that is always with you because you can't forget it, that's always charged and always ready to write. I think it's simple. Samsung has the most complete hardware and software experience that you can find on Android. They give you 7 years of software updates versus 4 to 5 on most others. Their One UI software skin is so stable, while being so customizable it makes every other brand look like a prude. Yesterday, I made my S Pen pointer into a Pokeball. Because I wanted to. I can make holding down the button and tapping twice take me straight to my
that's that was cringe, but okay.
Slack messages. I can turn my volume controls into a metallic violet animated gradient to match the color of the phone I got. It honestly goes on forever.
That doesn't match the color of your phone, but I guess you're a man and probably a little bit colorblind.
This is like the next era of super steady video, because now your phone is not just stable, but also completely flat. There's a reason that everyone online is talking about it. Or this privacy display. Look, I get it. I'm not an undercover MI6 agent. No one's learning state secrets by side-eyeing my
he's
phone.
very British. He did not say CIA or KGB.
But this is still such a great way to give you peace of mind. The ability to just black out those little notification bubbles as they come in. And also, I've set mine up so that a quick double tap like this is all I need to turn on the feature for the whole screen. So even when I'm just on Instagram, it actually does make me feel a little less self-conscious in public.
Oh my God, he sacrificed his power button's double tap feature. What did he map his camera to then? To triple tap? Wait, what's then, like, no payment processor then or whatever? Is that like a quadruple tap?
Because I don't want some rando judging me just because I've niched down into a feed that's almost 30% close-up shark encounter content right now. Hate to be that guy, but horizontal lock. That was a feature on Vivo phones back in 2022. Even Motorola's done this before.
And guess what?
And
nobody
those guys
cared.
aren't exactly cleaning up at the Smartphone Cameras Choice Awards. Literally the only reason people are talking about it now is because it's Samsung. It's mainstream. And privacy display? Well, funny story about that. You know that first hands-on video we made
he's actually, that's the black shirt guy, so he's getting more critical. I thought he was gonna praise this feature and just mention that it was on other phones, but yeah, he is correct. He is pointing out that it was on other phones, and he should have mentioned that nobody cared enough to make it the selling point.
Well, in that video, we accidentally leaked someone's phone number.
Just end the video
while we were shooting at a steep angle, while privacy display was on. That person got about 100 text messages in 2 hours. I think the concept of this feature is incredible and is definitely not a gimmick, but you turning that on and suddenly thinking that no one's going to see what you're up to is just wrong, unless you're keeping your phone.
Yes, unless it's in max mode, it actually is still pretty easy to snoop. I tried that in the store. I did like some weird angles around it. I could still see it. The reason why it looks so good on camera when it disappears, right? You see here, I'm watching my video live here for comments and stuff like that. But it's easy to say, oh, look how it disappears, right? Because your phone actually turns like 45 degrees, 90 degrees, super easy. But with your head, it's super easy to compensate for that. Somebody might even put their phones like this. Well, I'm just going to do like this. Again, if it's only absolutely necessary, but still.
On maximum protection mode, which you don't want to do because it makes everything look very strange to you, then I can still see your shark videos, 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 still see your shark videos. And really it's about there, at which point I can't clearly make out what you're watching. So whether I'm behind you on the bus or next to you on the bus, your screen is darker, but it's still readable.
And it's darker for you too, by the way, mind you, right? So it is going to result in a worse experience. If it is full screen, it's going to be lower pixel density and less bright.
I'm bummed that in the process of implementing privacy display, Samsung has reduced the effectiveness of their anti-reflective coating.
Correct.
They took the best, most unique thing about Samsung phones displays and silently nerfed it to make room for this feature that I would argue is going to be useful to fewer people. Okay, yes, there are compromises, but surely you can see that there is use for this. And we have to commend Samsung for being the first to do it, because someone's got to start. Innovation is good for the customer.
That's not how it works. Innovation, that's only like a new feature, but without actually asking what is it good for, it's not innovation. It's just new.
Frankly, why do I care if Vivo had a feature in 2022? The point is,
because that horizontal lock, clearly for you as a reviewer, if it would have actually been that important because nobody wants to limit their beautiful big sensors that capture 4K at 60 FPS. Samsung even does 8K. It looks crappy, but it still works. Down to 1080p 30.
It's here now on Samsung, and the
On
idea
iPhone, you can even do 4K 120 and it will look still great with a proper HDR handling and things like that.
of creating something with that is exciting to me. Remember, we actually took this to football practice the other day. And what a sick way to be able to capture action without...
Yeah, look how crappy this video is. Also, why would you be shooting it from this perspective without like putting it like on your chest or anything? Or at that point, use the higher resolution of your sensor if you're not actually playing. Because you clearly aren't playing if you're holding the phone. Go behind and just capture the entire field, or with a little bit of zoom onto him, and it's gonna look better and be super steady, because at that point you don't even have to move your phone around that much.
worrying about keeping the phone upright the whole time. But if you did want to go just full-on cinematic masterpiece, then I've also been using this phone with the Insta360 Flow 2 Pro, our sponsor. And that lets you have stabilization while filming in 8K quality. Plus, this
And
is
I love that the 8K looks crappy here.
a built-in selfie stick for super wide shots, built-in tripod so you can stop precariously balancing your phone on the nearest bench, the ability to track onto...
I know this is a sponsored message, but this is actually correct. And this is actually a valid argument in this case, because this is I do have one of those myself, an older generation one. Like, this is like a $1,300 device at base. If you're a real enthusiast, you're probably getting at least a 512 gigabyte version, which costs you a nice $1,500, right? Once you consider that, like, what does that leave you, right? You can buy any accessory you want, like, given the finances of this phone already.
and follow you around using the full quality of any camera.
Yeah, like, guys, I just saw that's the reason why I have comments. Like, I watch my video twice on my iPad and my iPhone. I just have my iPhone mostly turned off. Like, the chat and the live viewership numbers, they're not always concurrent. Like, they tend to be updated at very weird intervals. So I guess I have to use a lot of auxiliary tech until I get like a secondary monitor.
Phone. Plus, it's a mirror and it's a power bank, so you can even charge your device back up again. Does it give you a better sense of humor? Wow, incredible, really. So link below.
Wait, why is the white guy, the white shirt guy, doing this message? It kind of feels like a better fit for the black shirt
to get one
guy.
with a free AI tracker worth $40, which lets you track in native and even third-party camera apps. Okay. Very smooth sponsor integration. And fine, I don't completely agree with you, but I get your base point. As much as I like some big, juicy camera sensors and a huge battery, I can admit that there is innovation happening here in other ways. It just makes me wonder how incredible a Samsung phone could be if they pushed on all those fronts too. That's fair, but you might be waiting a while. For a company as broad as this, you got to remember that they're never going.
And apparently the Galaxy S26 Ultra is selling really well right now, so forget any customer backlash forcing their hand.
Cater to niche preferences like yours. They're never going to have the biggest cameras. They're never going to have the biggest batteries, because there's always a trade-off for someone else. But that's not a bad thing. In fact, that's how you make the best all-rounder for most people. So if I want to maximize for any one thing in particular, then there will always be a better choice than this. But assuming I fall into the main bucket of people who aren't leaning in any particular direction, then maybe it is quite nice to have a phone that...
But really, are we not making any price comparisons? Or are we forgetting that this is by MSRP $100 more expensive than the iPhone that has been out in the market for half a year? Are we forgetting that this even comes out a month later in the year than the Galaxy S25 Ultra did last year?
Is that safe choice medium? Yes. Although I will stand
But it shouldn't be the medium, it's the Ultra device.
firm that 90% of these AI features are never getting touched after the first week. I think they know that, but it's a new era. We don't know what features will end up sticking, so all they can do is to keep trying
Why
things.
is he using fake
that's what
blur?
they are
I don't
doing.
know.
So,
there are so many weird
do we agree?
choices here.
The S26 Ultra is actually pretty great.
Wait, no, that shouldn't be like... It should be like it's pretty good, because the base product, the S24 and S25 Ultra, were already good. This even has some compromises over those. Is everything shot on green screen? I wouldn't be surprised, yeah.
Fine.
Like, I mean, it's necessary here partially for the dual people setup, but a lot of them use it anyway. Well, obviously now it's not needed anymore, but yeah, this is fake blur.
It was a weird day.
Okay. Okay. I don't think I'm going to be able to watch
The
anything
Samsung
today.
S26 Ultra is the most...
Thank you guys for tuning in. We did so much today. We are now over 3 hours into the stream. I'm going to briefly check if there are any Apple news that I might have missed. I'm always surprised by how well Touch ID works for me on my MacBook. Like, tend to get pretty sweaty hands, and it rarely leads me astray. Does Parallels work? At the time of publication, MacBook Neo compatibility with Parallels Desktop has not yet been officially confirmed. Oh yeah, there might be some differences in virtualization features because the Mac hypervisor might not the hypervisor like accelerator might not be hardware accelerated anymore. Interesting. So that's one. I mean, but then this is an 8 gigs of RAM machine. Like, it's probably not going to be used much for virtual machines. And for Mac rumors, is there anything I missed over there? Apple discontinued this. Okay, good. We are done then for all the major leaks, rumors, and reviews for today. This was a super fun stream. Did not expect so many people to tune in. Obviously, we did a lot of numbers maxing, but there will be more to come. I will be taking most likely the day off tomorrow unless something surprising leaks. So, guys, before I leave, now over 3 hours into the stream, subscribe to the video, like it, subscribe to the channel, like the video. You see my voices already. Share the video out with anybody who you think might enjoy it. Don't just comment live, also comment in the regular comment section afterwards, because that helps a lot with the algorithm. Whenever you catch me live, consider making your live chat a super chat or a super sticker just for a small donation, or consider becoming a channel member right here on YouTube or a supporter over on Patreon. Any small donation goes a long way to help me keep up this channel. Stream more, stream longer, be more engaged. Already see a good night in the chat. Stu's also saying bye. Thank you to anyone who joined right now. Thank you for anyone who joined the Discord. You'll find a link to that as well. I'll catch you guys very soon. As always, let me know what else you would like to see me cover beyond all that multitude of Apple news. Now we are also kind of done with our topic, with our chapter on the Galaxy S26 Ultra. So, and I will be very busy and after the second half of the month. So I really wanted to do more streaming now before that happens. So thank you to Apple for actually content dropping so much right before I get super busy at work. Take care, everyone. I'll see you guys soon. This is Mark Tech, tuning out.